a playlist original.
All right, hello everyone, and welcome to another episode of Back to the Blockbuster with your hosts, Gaius and Jackson. What is up, my friend, after our post 100
Ma-
episode high?
Yes, things that we finally hit it. Things have been calm the last week. Taking some time to ourselves. It's been great. Really excited about today's episode, though. I had a light watch now that the weight is off our shoulders. Episode 100 is behind us. I think this is a great, almost like first episode to get back into things with episode 101 because
Yeah,
this movie is such a awesome classic, and I'm like very excited to talk about it today. So I'm thrilled.
yeah, this is a good one to kind of like get back into, as we talked about all the things we were excited for in episode 100, and there's like
Mhm.
so many things that we have planned episode wise, like in the future, that
And
we're
we're
really
hitting the
excited.
ground running.
Yeah, that we're really excited about. And this little anniversary, a lot of you, so many people were posting about it yesterday because it was the anniversary yesterday. We're recording today on a
Right.
Monday. Jurassic Park was released on June 11th, 1993. So it's 30 years old. I love seeing
Ooh.
everyone's posts on Twitter and Instagram, just
Yeah.
raving about raving about the movie. And then also, depending on when they discovered it, either they saw it in theaters like I did when they were a kid, and like
Oh
remember
my
that
God.
feeling of seeing
There.
it. Yeah, and then or you caught it later in life. However you saw it, it's a movie that's magical to a lot of people. I think it is a
Absolutely.
really great example of how Spielberg has this ability to kind of tap into this sense of adventure and childhood, and it's so very associated with his movies. And I think this one has that aesthetic as well, like, in a different way to something like ET, but that kind of same kind of like, oh, this is like what a true movie going experience should be like. And you're seeing something very groundbreaking for the very first time, because this movie was hugely groundbreaking in terms of effects and practical effects as well, animatronics and all that
100%
too.
it is. 30
um
years later, it still looks better than a lot of movies that are pumping out,
it
these
does.
CGI, effects these days. I think it still looks amazing 30 years later.
It does. I would argue that there are scenes in Jurassic Park, this is in 1993, that look better than anything, some of the stuff they did in Jurassic World Fallen Kingdom,
Yeah,
Jurassic World
can't
Dominion.
argue with
And like,
that. Yeah.
and I know we're not going to talk about the sequels too much, but I will say that it's interesting that we got this one really great movie. I know Spielberg is
Mhm.
responsible for the sequel, which I don't love The Lost World, and
Okay.
probably because there's so much, like, I even remember being that young, how much hype there was for The Lost World, because like, oh, we're
I
getting
can
a
only
sequel to
imagine.
this.
Yeah.
And I mean, it gets better like with age. I think I can appreciate things about it more now. It just doesn't have the same like feel as the first one, but I guess because you've seen all the stuff
Hard to
already.
replicate the first one.
Right,
Yeah.
right. And then
And you're missing a lot of that cast. Yeah.
yeah, and then Jurassic Park 3. I mean, I give it credit for at least being short and sweet and to the point. Oh, there's that.
Yeah. There's
Now,
some cool
lots of
sequences in that movie. I think it
yeah,
gets a lot of hate, but it's not terrible. I don't think it's definitely
yeah,
not. I don't think it holds a candle to the first one, and maybe
at
not so
all.
much the second one either. But I still think it's fun time. I've watched it a handful of
It's
times.
a lean 90 minutes. It's like it's
Yep.
crazy how like they did not make that, but they were like, okay, Lost World was too long. There was too much filler. So let's just like cut, any real narrative and just
Mhm.
show you some like dinosaur action. And that's what that movie
Yeah.
is, and cool. And as far as
At least it knows what it's trying to do.
the new trilogy, I think Jurassic World is the closest to recapturing what Jurassic Park
Agreed. I
was.
honestly like Jurassic World for all
I
its
do too.
faults. I think it's a good spiritual sequel down the
I
legacy
yeah,
sequel.
yeah. I
Second
think
one
it
is
is a
yeah.
mess.
It's a
It's
mess. There's things I like about it and a lot of good ideas that just don't get executed well. And I've
yeah.
yet to see Dominion because I've just been so turned off by all the negative press
Oh,
around that movie. But I
it's
will
so
see it probably because
bad.
I can't help myself. But there's just such a golden opportunity down the toilet with that movie. It sucks that they wasted that. But I know I
Yeah.
hear exactly what you just said. That's
By the
terrible.
way, and wasted it right away. They didn't even like they were like, no, remember that cool thing
Right
that
out
happened
the
at the end?
gates, eh?
Yeah, that cool thing that happened at the end of Fallen Kingdom. Yeah, yeah,
Man,
we're not doing that. We're not doing that. Sorry, guys.
what a
I remember,
shame.
I remember when we
Great
saw
ending.
Fallen Kingdom. When we saw Fallen Kingdom, my buddy next to me, it was just like, it was, I think, the last 30, 40 minutes of the movie. He's like, why did this turn into like a horror movie all of a sudden? It's almost like they're like in this big giant house. It's almost got this kind of like haunted house vibe, the way
That's
that like
a
the stuff
great,
shot.
great point.
Yeah,
Yeah.
I think there's two very different movies that work here, and they both don't work. But yeah, But at least Jurassic Park, 1993, just about everything works in this movie, at least for me.
Just having come
The
off the watch, I don't think there's a single complaint I really had about this movie. Like it was so joyous and fun to have sat back down and watched this again. It hadn't been that long since I'd seen
Yeah,
it last, but it still feels like watching it for the first time every time you see, like, especially that Brachiosaurus scene near the beginning, the first dinosaur they lay eyes on. Not gonna
yeah.
lie, it brought tears to my eyes. Just like the pure movie magic, and I was like, man, this looks so amazing.
And the music, man.
Oh, it's such a
That,
yeah, exactly. Howard Shore kills it.
no, John Williams.
Or,
John Williams.
no, John Williams. John
Yeah, yeah,
Williams.
yeah, yeah. John Williams score. That John Williams score is like amazing. And John Williams, this guy was doing composing music for this and Schindler's List. This is all going on around the same time. And so is Spielberg.
Well, they
Spielberg
come out
is
the
also
same year, right?
yeah. Spielberg is on post on Jurassic Park while he's doing Schindler's List. So he's doing like filming Schindler's List and then getting all this like video stuff for Jurassic Park. And he said it was his most difficult year as a filmmaker, but like it paid off. So
So even hearing that from him is hard to believe because I was just looking, just tallying this up before we filmed. He's
yeah,
had 5 different years where he's released 2 movies in the same year. Like the guy doesn't sleep. He's an absolute animal as a
yeah,
director, just a workhorse. So this was, I think, the first, no, the second time that he'd released 2 pictures in one year with Schindler's List and Jurassic Park, but he did it again
yeah,
in 2002 with Minority Report and Catch Me If You
if
Can.
you can, yeah.
3 years later, and yeah, which another like 2 amazing movies of his in the 2000s. His 2000s are awesome. Every decade
Yeah,
of
yeah.
many movies is fantastic. But then 2005, he did Munich and War of the Worlds. 2011, Adventures of Tintin and Warhorse, and I think he did Amistad and the sequel to this movie in 1997. Like 5 years of
Yeah.
2 movies. That is not
It's crazy.
an easy thing to do.
And if you believe Hollywood legend, he might have also did it with E.T. and Poltergeist because there's that big rumor that yes,
That's a great point.
yes, Toby Hooper
That's a great point.
directed Poltergeist, but apparently Spielberg was very involved, but he
Yes.
was busy doing E.T. But apparently still very
Right.
involved with the creative process behind Poltergeist. There's a lot of back and forth on like who directed it. I think this is a funny thing to think about. But yeah,
It 100% feels like it has all the dynamics of a Spielberg movie, and I've only ever seen Texas Chainsaw by Toby Hooper, but
yeah,
this movie does not feel like anything that I've seen him do before. It feels like it's got Steve's fingerprints all over it. So that's a good point.
yeah.
I'm glad you mentioned that. I didn't realize those came out the same year, but yeah.
Yeah, my buddy Chris
Jeez.
back in the day when he always like, has Spielberg ever done like a horror film? And he goes, yeah, Poltergeist. I believe that he directed it. He's like, all right, go, man.
100%. I think he should definitely get shadow credit. But honestly, on that note, I totally think there are a lot of horror elements in this movie. It's a monster
for
movie
sure.
at heart when you think about it.
Yeah.
A lot of great tension and horrific scenes in it.
Yeah.
It feels like the most like his horror movie beyond Poltergeist.
And apparently toned down a lot from Michael Crichton's book. Apparently, the book there's a lot of gorier stuff
It's
in
a
it.
shame.
But I mean,
I guess it's not in his element.
Yeah, it's not
Yeah.
really his thing.
He's a family man.
But yeah, I was interested in just doing research for the episode, and I was like, I wonder how much of the book is in here. And Michael Crichton said that the script is maybe like 15-20% of what the book was, which is like that's a whole lot.
Wow.
That's a whole lot. That's not like there's certain character relationships that change. There was more explanation as to how like the whole science behind bringing the dinosaurs back,
Yes.
which they actually just cleverly do in that one scene with all the animation. And you're like, all right, that's all I need. That's all the explanation I
I
need.
think it honestly works. They don't waste too much time on explaining the shit that no one's gonna really understand, and they do it. They explain everything. I think in layman's terms, like quite well, so that you
Yeah.
can have a sense of like what's going on, how they were able to do this. But I think they spent just the right amount of time on all the genome stuff,
Yeah.
the biology
Well,
behind the dinosaurs.
as you know, guys, we've been doing a few little draft things of some of our episodes lately. It's been well received so far. So it was Jackson's idea
Glad
to
to hear it.
do a little special one for our boy Steven Spielberg because, I mean, it's a milestone anniversary for a really great film by a director who's made countless great movies. I mean, even when you were just naming off some of the films where he had like 2 a year, some of those are some of his great movies as well.
Absolutely, and just a
and
drop in the bucket.
yeah. So before we get into like the ins and outs of the 30th anniversary of Jurassic Park, we're going to do a little Snake Draft, Steven Spielberg edition. I feel like this is going to be a really hard one because there's so many good movies. I'm sure
Yeah.
we have some of the same ones, and I'm going to have to do a lot of crossing off and deleting all my notes in my iPhone here. That's where I have the movies.
No doubt. It's lucky with, it's kind of like with Martin Scorsese. It's like, even if like all movies that you wanted to pick in this draft are taken, like he's got so many other amazing films to choose from. But yeah, I just felt like, I know that this guy has so many movies. I'm sure no doubt we'll be chatting about Steven Spielberg again in the future of the podcast, but might not get the chance to really, you know, highlight his filmography. So I thought, with in honor of today's episode, it would be a good time to pay homage to his filmography. And I thought a draft would be a good way to respect that. But I will give you the honors of starting first. So who's your number one pick?
Thank you for letting me go first. And
I honestly don't know where you're going with it.
Yeah, I'm gonna go with this one because despite what Owen says about love for this movie and how if I could watch one movie over and over again for the rest of my life, and I picked this one and I got made fun of for it by him, I'm claiming
what?
Owen. Yeah, I'm claiming E.T. right now first because I love it.
Oh, right. Okay. When you said this one, I thought you were going Jurassic Park. Okay. I remember you saying this now.
I thought about taking that first. I thought about taking it first.
I thought so too.
I think I need. I mean, I grew up with both of them, but I need E.T. I just need it.
Fair enough. 100%. Did I tell you that I had not really seen it front to back before?
What? So you've only seen like scenes? Man, this is up there with
like when I was a kid. It would have been on cable television, but I can't honestly say that I've sat down and watched this movie E.T. front to start. So that is like very, very high on my list. There's too many movies out there, guys. But great pick. True. I knew it was going to be picked. Just a matter of when. But I wanted to. I feel like if we weren't covering Jurassic Park, I probably would have just started with this movie as my number one pick. But I'm gonna go and take Saving Private Ryan, my number one pick. Like,
I might have to
phenomenal movie, one of the best to ever do it.
It's being currently deleted from my list because I was on.
Sorry about that. Honestly, it's funny because like this movie, this is like I didn't even consider this one when I was picking all my five. I had to go through his filmography. I'm like, I know I'm forgetting some Spielberg bangers in here. I was like, oh my god, how could I not have thought about Saving Private Ryan? And sure enough, it's my first pick. So sorry about that.
Well, I mean, since you're not taking Jurassic Park, I will take Jurassic Park.
not a wrong choice.
I will take Jurassic Park.
Would like to have that
up there with my ET.
Absolutely. Kind of in the same vein of like science fiction, because that's very much what this movie is.
Yeah.
I recently saw his AI, artificial intelligence, for the first time.
That's a great movie.
Late last year. Oh my god, it's literally just futuristic Pinocchio.
Yeah,
but
that's a hit. That's a hit or miss one with a lot of people. People either really love it or they're like, yeah, I love it.
One of the most profoundly emotional movies I think I've seen in a very long time. It struck a chord, and I was like just very moved by it. And I can say I actually absolutely love that movie. So AI, if you haven't seen it, guys, very worth. I think it was like, if not his first, one of his first movies in the 2000s that he made. But it wasn't a huge hit either. It got mixed reviews too when it came out. I mean, and there was the whole thing with like, you know, Stanley Kubrick started that or wanted to make that movie, and there was a lot of you could tell there's a little bit of both of them in it. Yes, which is just a dynamite match. I love that.
Yeah, but yeah, I actually love that movie a lot too. So
the movie's really awesome. So yeah.
All right, good on you. So I am going to take another one, even though it's not the best reviewed movie of his, and he actually doesn't even think it's great, but it has so many fans out there that do love it. I'm taking Hook.
Okay.
Because a lot of people.
Interesting.
It's very rotten on Rotten Tomatoes. It has a really rotten score, but like it's one of those movies.
I have that feeling about this movie, but I haven't seen it.
Yeah, it's one of those movies that's a fan favorite, and like all the fans are just like, when they hear him talk about how he doesn't really like it either, we're like, oh, but
really,
yeah, like I don't think it came together the way he wanted, but like for so many people that like grew up with that movie, it's pretty much damn near perfect. I don't know what he.
I mean, Robin Williams and Steven Spielberg, like that is phenomenal pairing. I don't know how that movie could have gone any other way. I'd like to know the ins and outs behind the scenes of what he thinks went wrong in that flick, but I haven't seen Hook, but so
I think you would like. I think you would like. It's fun. It's definitely fun.
Oh,
it's definitely
fun. I would. I have a feeling it's very much like adventure-y, like very much like akin to like his indie movies.
Yeah.
If I were to guess, but yeah, okay, good pick. I wouldn't have thought of it. I didn't have that one written down because I haven't seen it, but one I'm happy to snag in my number 3 spot. One I've only seen once by him that I'm very keen on rewatching is Munich, his 2005.
Oh, I did not have that one.
Espionage revenge movie. Haven't seen?
No, I have seen it. I just didn't have it. I didn't have it on my list.
Oh, okay. Yeah, no, yeah. Number three, going with Munich. I would really like to see that one again. That is a lengthy Spielberg movie. I mean, many of his ours, but that
Yeah,
is a you got to sit down, dedicate a lot of time to that one. But fantastic. Eric Bana in the lead. Lots to love.
yeah, really good. I am going to, because when Owen brought it up on his movies to get, we brought it up a little bit on the movies to get to know me thing, where he said like he talked about Arrival, and he said this other movie used to be like one of his top movies as well. Catch Me If You Can
Okay.
is like a huge one. I remember seeing it in theaters around like the Christmas holiday. It was around the time it came out, and it was just like right away. I just loved everything about it. Leonardo DiCaprio's performance, Tom Hanks is great in it. Christopher
Yep.
Walken gives a very like subdued for him performance that's like really good.
Very
Um,
true.
I just love the way the film looks. Like you feel the era when you're watching it.
Yes, you do.
And I think it's just a good example of like how he can direct so many different types of movies. Like he can bounce from so many different genres without missing a beat. So yeah, I have to add that
100% he
one to
can.
my list.
Very eclectic director. Honestly, like my experience with Catch Me If You Can is very weird. Like all like it's one of those movies by a very acclaimed film director, but like that most of like my casual movie going friends like very much adore. And I feel like first time I saw it, I felt like I was missing out on what made that movie so special. But over the years, having seen it as many times as I have now, I've come to really adore and appreciate that movie. But I
Yeah.
wasn't in on it 100% initially. I don't know what I was
Oh,
missing. It
okay.
has everything that I'd love in a movie. It's Spielberg, it's Leo, who's my absolute favorite. But
Yeah.
no, I definitely see why that movie is so beloved now. But I remember feeling like I know so many people love this movie, but like I liked it. But anyway, definitely one that's
Yeah.
grown on me over time.
Yeah, for
Can't
sure.
explain why, but great one to snag. I cannot believe this has gone this far, but in my fourth spot, I got to go with Raiders of the Lost Ark.
I didn't have it. You know, it was a. I didn't put any Indiana Jones movies, and I surprised they didn't.
It's
But I
weird to
figured, I
think of
figured,
that way.
yeah. I mean, this just means that he's made so many movies. It was just like, yeah,
Exactly. Like when you've made so many movies that like even the Indiana Jones don't come up on the list, that
yeah,
says something about how many movies you put out. But I mean, nothing to say about the movie that hasn't been said. It spawned one of the greatest feel-good adventure series of all time, and it's kind of a
yeah,
shame how it progressed over time. But that first one is very special. So
yeah.
Raiders, baby, all the way.
There you go. I've always been partial to Temple of Doom. I always like the dark ones a little bit. That one's like the darkest of the
Oh,
three
100%.
as far as
Sounded like
tone. I'm
me
like,
over there.
yeah. Like that one
Yeah.
is like. There's a lot of stuff that's not really. If you're watching it as a kid, you're like, oh, I probably shouldn't be watching that. But
The
it's
climax of that movie is like probably scarring to kids like
yeah,
who grew up
very
watching
yeah.
it. Like,
But I've
God,
always kind of enjoyed that one a lot. Oh well.
can't blame you.
Speaking of things that might terrify you when you're young, I have to go with Jaws and snag it up. I just love the approach of less is more, even though less is more happened by accident because the mechanical
Yeah,
trees didn't
yeah.
really they really work a lot, but you
Happy
work
accident.
happy accident. You work with what you got, and he really did in a really fantastic way. It still holds up, I think too. I think it's a really well done movie.
And he was what, like 23 making
He's
that
pretty
movie,
young, pretty
22,
young.
23. Like,
Yeah,
very impressive. Working
and
with some
it's
greats.
solidified him as a kind of blockbuster director too. I think we have a episode in the future about kind of like the summer box office season because Jaws'
Yes.
anniversary is coming. It's not like a milestone anniversary, but it's an anniversary, and that
Right.
for a lot of people that really for at least industry people say that really kicked off what we would call like the summer
The
blockbuster movie. Like
blockbuster,
it's a movie,
absolutely.
yeah, and
It's
that has
fun.
evolved. Of course, evolved over time with other movies that really changed how movies are marketed during the summer. Batman 89 is another really great example of how they took merchandising and all that during that summer and promoted
Uh,
the hell out of that movie to make it a true summer blockbuster. But yeah, Jaws was the
mhm.
first, arguably. And we were just talking about earlier how he's never really made like unless you count Poltergeist, a straight horror film. But like Jaws has a lot of elements of horror in it, like much like Jurassic Park does too. I mean, so clearly
Yeah.
if he ever wanted to make a very, very scary movie, think he probably could.
I think he'd have it in him more like maybe in his like younger days. I feel like decades of making mostly like family oriented movies maybe
Yeah, I don't
made
think
him
he could do it
soft,
now.
but
I don't think he could do it
at
now.
a
Yeah.
point, I think that guy would have been a great horror director. It's a shame we never got a straight up horror movie from him, but even Poltergeist, if say that's him, very much a product of its time. I think a
Right.
lot of studio interference. It doesn't really like stand on its legs all the time or really go where it really could go, but still fantastic horror directing.
Yes.
Not surprised. I'm glad Jaws was chosen on this list, even if I didn't get it. In my last pick. I really want to go. Have you seen his TV movie debut with Duel?
Duel, yeah, I've seen it. I've seen Duel
I
because a lot of
really
people that movie Joyride that came with Paul Walker. A lot of people compare Joyride to Duel, and they say it's
interesting.
not really so much like a ripoff, but they say it's kind of like the same almost DNA as Duel. So I did watch Duel
Oh,
because of
okay,
that because I had never seen it, and it is good. It's solid. It's a
interesting.
solid
Phenomenal. I
I guess
honestly
thriller,
really enjoyed
right?
that
I guess it
movie.
would be a thriller.
Yeah,
Yeah,
like a
yeah,
highway thriller,
yeah,
absolutely. Like
yeah,
just kind of honestly, kind of like a killer movie. But I wanted to shout that movie out, even though I'm not going to take it in my 5 spot. I just think if definitely Spielberg fans should watch that. Like even for me, I'm guilty for years. I was like, oh, it's not one of his real like movies, but technically it's his debut, and I was kind of being partial to it. But although it's a TV movie, I'd say like he directs it like amazingly, especially as young as he was. But I think I may as well just throw in Schindler's List in number 5 because that movie is in a league of its own, even in terms of Spielberg's movies, and like a very hefty, hard watch, but one that's very important and
yeah,
like super well done by him, and one that I
yeah.
also find myself really wanting to rewatch too. And a great performance by Liam Neeson as well, and probably his greatest, I'd say.
Yeah, I'll be honest with you,
But
man. It's been years since I watched it. Like I haven't watched it in such a long time. I probably am long overdue. It's a hard one to watch though,
yeah,
so it's hard to
it
like.
is.
It's hard to just
Takes a
pop that in.
physical toll on you to watch.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah,
Oh, what am I gonna watch today? Yeah,
yeah.
Schindler's List,
Casual,
3 hour
casual Sunday. Yeah,
Holocaust movie.
yeah,
Holy smokes, it demands a lot of the viewer, but definitely an impressive piece of filmmaking. And just, I think if a director made just that movie alone, it would cause enough for them to stand out amongst the greats. But that's just a
yeah.
drop in the bucket of all the movies he's made. And we're, of course, leaving off tons of other fantastic movies. But
Yeah,
no, okay, I'm glad we got that
I'm
done.
glad we did that too, but I was just thinking about that. To everyone listening, there are so many movies that we didn't even name that are just really, really great. And it's just a testament of like how amazing this guy is as a filmmaker. Like Close Encounters of the Third Kind. I love Minority Report. That
I
was
know,
like I didn't put it on. I kept going back and forth about putting it on my list. Same thing
right?
with
I haven't seen it yet, so I couldn't.
same thing with Close
I really got
Encounters.
to, though.
Someone out there is going to be like, bro, you put Hook on there. You could probably replace it with something else.
But hey, obviously, if you love that movie, then all the power to you.
Yeah, I do,
Um,
man.
I just saw Bridge of Spies for the first time last week, actually, and like really enjoyed that one.
You know what other movie I liked? It's a good movie too. There's some good performances in that. I think I liked it because
Absolutely.
like I grew up reading the books and I used to watch the cartoon when I was a kid. But The Adventures of Tintin, if you grew up with that, is actually not a bad movie. He did that too.
Oh, okay.
Uh,
I did not know that
it's
was based on anything else.
yeah, it's solid if you like follow. I used to love the books. They're like really fun little like mystery books.
Oh, okay.
And like the cartoon, I used to watch a lot when I was a kid too. And you can
Mhm.
just tell that Spielberg, he was a fan of Tintin, and you can tell when you're watching it that this is being
Oh,
made
okay.
by a fan of the source material. And I love Ready Player One. If you're talking like other recent movies by him,
A
like
hundred
I think
percent. That would
you
be a
know,
great one.
I mean, he was born to make that movie. Like
A
who
hundred
else would do
percent he
that?
was.
But yeah,
I
that,
can imagine.
that's the cool thing about doing this. That for this one in particular, I mean, Scorsese was hard too because he has a lot of good movies, but like Spielberg has
Right.
a ton of like you either can go real mainstream popcorn blockbuster entertainment with him or like prestige
Yep.
filmmaking with him. So
The man really does it all.
everything. And God, I mean, if you got into all the stuff he produces, like he has his hand in so
Oh my
many
god, that's
different
way
pots.
too many. Like the
Yeah.
guy never stops, throws money at stuff.
Yeah, and this is just a guy who loves making movies, and you can tell that
Yeah.
in
I hope he
everything that
never
he does.
stops.
Yeah,
Yeah,
I mean, though, like the
absolutely.
last movie for him from that we get from him is gonna be this will be a sad day if that's like the last one. I will if they're
It will
still
be.
good, if they're still good, keep cranking them out, Spielberg, because you are one of our best filmmakers
Yeah.
still living today. So
Born to do it, and just is so like transparent with his love of the industry and the art of movie making that I wouldn't care what he did. I would definitely no doubt watch it. And I hope he's pumping them out till the day he's gone, because that guy
yeah,
was
I
born
agree.
to it. But
All right,
yeah, I'm
all right,
glad we did that. Moving
that was
on
fun.
now. Yeah, that was a
Sure.
blast.
Yeah,
Love you,
so this was
Steve.
good. We got to throw in some Steve stuff to go along with our 30th anniversary chat about Jurassic Park. It feels weird to say for those of you that don't know what the movie's about, but just in case you've never seen it, just in case.
We might have some young
Yeah.
listeners that maybe didn't grow up with this, but highly recommend seeing this. But yeah,
Yeah.
take it away.
1993 American science fiction film directed by Steven Spielberg, produced by Kathleen Kennedy, which surprised me because every time I see that name is so associated with Star Wars now. I forgot that she was
Right.
like involved at all in this kind of stuff.
A lot
And
of his earlier works. Yeah.
yeah. It is based on Michael Crichton's 1990 novel of the same name with a screenplay by Crichton and David. Is it Co-op or Cope? I think it's Cope. Koeppa. I just want to make sure I got that right. The film stars Sam Neill, Laura Dern, Jeff Goldblum, and Richard Attenborough. And of course, there's two precocious kids in the movie as well, who I will love to talk about in
Yes.
a few moments here. But in the film, a wealthy businessman played by John Hammond and who John Hammond played by Attenborough, and a team of genetic scientists have created a wildlife park of de-extinct dinosaurs. When industrial sabotage leads to a catastrophic shutdown of the park's power facilities and security precautions, a small group of visitors, including Hammond's grandchildren, struggle to survive and escape the now perilous island that Jurassic Park is on. As we said earlier, the film opened on June 11th, 1993. At the time that it came out, it was the highest grossing movie of all time until Titanic was released in 1997.
Wow.
And it had the biggest opening weekend for a film, $50.1 million opening weekend. That was the biggest opening weekend for a film up to that point. It was dethroned 2 years later by Batman Forever of all movies.
Uh,
The film won over 20 awards, including 3 Academy Awards for technical achievements in visual effects and sound design. And in
yeah. It's
2018,
fine otherwise.
it'd be a crime, yeah. In 2018, it was selected for preservation in the United States National Film Registry by the Library of Congress as culturally, historically, or aesthetically significant. And like we mentioned earlier, the film has 5 sequels: The Lost World, Jurassic Park, released in 97, Jurassic Park 3 in 2001, Jurassic World 2015, Jurassic World Fallen Kingdom 2018, and the most recently released Jurassic World Dominion in 2022. So this is going to be interesting. So we always ask each other, like, when did we first discover
Yes.
these movies? I think we're going to have different answers here,
No
as you already
doubt.
know.
Mine, no doubt, nearly as exciting as I'm sure you mentioned that you saw it in theaters. So tell us about what that experience would have been like. I so
So
wish I was there. I'm 5 years late, but
yeah, I mean, was so what I remember the most about being a kid before this movie came out. I remember the marketing really well, the trailers and like
okay.
TV spots. The trailers and TV spots actually did a really good job of not showing too much of the dinosaur stuff. They showed you enough to get you excited, which has kind of been
Okay.
has been his motif since like Jaws, right? Since that happy accident with Jaws is like, don't show them everything. Don't show them all the money shots. You don't have to.
Right.
So a lot of
Back
the
when
trailer,
movies knew how to be marketed.
yeah, so a lot of the trailers are just like the ominous, the water shaking from like the heart, the T-Rex's like footsteps and all that
What
stuff.
a scene.
And I remember my mom took me and a friend to go see when we were, God, that was 93, so 10 or 11, somewhere around there.
Okay.
And wasn't expecting to be frightened by it. So that threw my mom off when she took us to see it, because I don't think she was expecting us to be frightened by it, because the
Right.
beginning of it is so like it's like an hour into the movie before any dinosaur action happens. I mean, you see like you said, the Brachiosaurus and all that, but like before shit gets cray, it's an hour into the movie when that happens. So like the beginning start of it, it's kind of like this really cool fun adventure kind of thing. Like it gets you in the mood, like
Yep.
I feel like you want to be there kind of like experience.
Absolutely. You feel jealous of these characters that are experiencing this
But
until you
like
don't.
once the first attack, the T-Rex thing happened, I remember me and my buddy were afraid when that stuff happened, because it's a truly scary sequence. And then thinking like, it can't get much worse. And then you get to the whole sequence with the Velociraptors, and that's even worse than the T-Rex stuff. But still, even though there was a mix of being like frightened by it, there was also this, like you said, there's like a sense of adventure attached to the movie too. And I don't know if you were like this when you were young. I used to love learning about dinosaurs when I was a kid. So to
I was
actually,
into them, but I never went out of my way. But they fascinated
yeah.
me, no doubt.
So to actually see, I mean, he gets a lot of credit for it. I mean, they talk about it all the time, but he pretty much in a really real way brought dinosaurs back to life. I mean, it feels like, hey, this is what this would be like if someone decided to open a park like this. And of course, we're basing what
100%.
we're basing what we know of dinosaurs based on like fossils and all this other stuff, but like this is the image that we have in our heads of what they might look like. And he brought that
Yes.
to life in such a real way that it's still 30 years later truly groundbreaking. And I remember being a kid being amazed that like I think this is what this would be if like they were still roaming the earth right now, right?
Yeah.
And that is something that doesn't go away even years later when you're watching it. I watched it today,
Not even a little bit.
and it's
Yeah,
the same feeling today. Like, I mean, it
absolutely.
looks
I couldn't agree
it looks
more.
better than most movies that came out a few years ago, or this year, or like
It's
whatever.
truly movie magic on display. I cannot understand how something produced back when it was looks so convincing and so you're even like trying to look for like the anomalies or like looking to see, especially once you have a keen eye for noticing this sort of thing. Where
Yeah,
can you notice that this is an animatronic? It's a perfect blend of, I'm assuming, a little bit of CGI and the animatronics and the practical effects, but it is done so masterfully. It looks so
yeah.
amazing. Like watching that first T-Rex attack scene, my mouth was so wide open in this big goofy grin. I was like just so in awe at this scene 30 years later, how amazing it looked. I felt like a kid again. It
Dude.
was
And
so
on
awesome.
surround sound, I like cranked it up. I was like cranked it all the way
Oh
up.
my god.
And I mean, you can hear stuff behind
The
you that you
T-Rex
probably like.
sounds
It's
so
like, ah,
awesome.
it's so cool. And yeah, like even in that scene alone, you can. I mean, you're going from what animatronics clearly were like. You see it like eating like the goat, and that's clearly
Yes,
animatronic, right? But then when it steps out, that
right.
that's a special effect, but it's mixed in with like different parts of the scene where it bounces back and forth between
Yes,
what is clearly a computer generated effect and then something that's an animatronic thing, to the point where it blends so well together that you just think that you're looking at something
seamlessly.
real. It's
Yeah.
seamless. And
Might as
that
well be a
scene,
documentary. It looks so
yeah,
real.
that scene alone captures that so really so well. And yeah, that was the kind of sense I had for it when I was a kid, and I've loved it ever since. I owned it on VHS. I've owned it on DVD. I have it on Blu-ray.
Nice.
I have all of them on Blu-ray. I mean, I may not love all of them, but I have all of them on Blu-ray
Right.
because
It's
completely
nice to have
separate.
them all, yeah.
Yeah. But this one, nothing. I mean, like I said, I think Jurassic World is the closest to kind of recapturing that, and I say that very like it's still far away. But
Honestly, yeah, yeah.
yeah, it's still far away.
It's
But
like a distant second cousin to Jurassic Park, but
like
it's in the family.
yeah, but Spielberg clearly struck gold with this in 1993. Just proof that he had still had so much. I mean, he was just still given a lot as a filmmaker, and could still break the. You're it's 1993, and I know, like, of course, there's filmmaking is expanding all that around that time, but this was someone that was doing things with like you said, computer effects, animatronics, sound design. Like, I mean, the creation of DTS comes from this, which is you wanted that for surround sound formats and all that for the film.
Okay.
There's a lot of like innovation here that like I think some might take for granted if they don't really know. But this movie broke so many, just broke down so many walls as far as what you can do on screen and have it look fairly realistic without making it seem like you are watching what looks like a special effect. And and,
Absolutely.
and you're patting our boy on the back a lot, but I mean that's just
I think
this
he's
is him,
earned it.
this is him at his very best. You know,
Yes, firing on all cylinders.
cylinders. Yeah,
Pure Steven Spielberg magic.
yeah. Or what about you, buddy? When did
As
you
far
first discover it?
it's one of those ones like where this movie had been out quite popular before I was even around. I was exposed to this movie much earlier than I can probably even before I even have memories of it. So
Yeah,
I can't quite say that I know for sure when I first saw it, but it was very present in my life. Like just growing up in the 2000s as a young kid, everyone knew what Jurassic Park was. It was the first two and three movies, as far as I know, other than maybe like some appearances in like the 30s King Kong. I don't think we'd seen dinosaurs on screen, at least
yeah.
not in this capacity, like we
I
did
like
in
this. Yeah,
Steven's. Like this was so as a kid growing up in the 2000s, this was the ultimate dinosaur. These were the dinosaur movies. This is what every kid that was even moderately enjoyed to were fascinated by dinosaurs. This was their Bible. This was their text for
yeah,
what they looked like, what they sounded like, as you mentioned. So it was that was just very present in any kid's life at that time. So I don't know when I first saw it, but over the years, like getting into movies and film and developing appreciation, it was one that was always top of mind that I had seen every so often, find new things to enjoy and appreciate and just marvel at while watching it. So I've seen it many, many times over the years. I would have
yeah,
liked to have been like to have noticed and recognized when my first experience of it would have been, because definitely I saw it young enough that I wouldn't have had like the appreciation for what I was watching. This is just what movies could do when I was a
right.
kid. But very envious of anybody who could have seen this in theaters for the first time, especially at that age. You would have seen it.
Yeah,
That would have just been chef's kiss.
yeah.
Probably would have. I
It's
probably would have like died in the theater.
Probably one of my best experiences, like as a child, seeing a movie. I mean, it's you remember, you really, with a movie like this, you really remember, if you're old enough to remember,
Yeah,
you really remember that moment and what it was like seeing something like that on the big screen for the very first time. It's
I can
truly
only imagine.
a really it feels real, I would say, life-changing experience, like as a kid watching something like that you've never seen something
Well,
like that
yeah.
on the screen before.
Nope.
And I, even being that young, I even remember the chatter of like from reviews or people, like, stuff, them covering it on TV and all that, and everyone being like, this is something we haven't seen before, this is like really unique. And
Right.
of course, leave it to Steven Spielberg to be the one to do it, but he really wanted to do this. I mean, he wanted a piece of Michael Crichton's book, I think in
Yeah.
1989, 1990. Like, he knew he was writing something like this, and he was like, all right,
Okay.
well, in 1990, he was like, I want the rights to this. And he fought with I think Tim Burton was another one that wanted shot at it.
Oh,
I
wow.
was looking at a few other directors too. Yeah, Tim Burton, Warner Brothers and Tim Burton wanted it. Columbia Pictures and Richard Donner wanted it. And 20th Century Fox and Joe Dante wanted it too. Joe Dante, of course,
Okay.
did like Gremlins, and Richard Donner did
Gremlins with Spielberg. Yeah.
yeah, then Richard Donner did Lethal Weapon and the Goonies. So, and Tim Burton, I mean, they all would be interesting choices.
I
See
think,
them all
yeah, it would be
tackling
cool
it.
to see what they would have done with it. Yeah, definitely.
But yeah, Spielberg really, really wanted it, and Michael Crichton demanded $1.5 million for the film rights. And
That's it.
yeah, well, I guess
Oh
it's
my
19.
God.
I guess it's like
I
1990, so
know.
maybe that was like. So I guess I was like,
In hindsight, though,
what?
he's sitting on a gold mine. I cannot believe he only let it go for $1.5 million. That is insane.
Yeah, and
Good for him.
and then after completing Hook, actually, Spielberg wanted to immediately work on Schindler's List, but they kind of came to a compromise, like, okay, like, you can do both, but we want you to do Jurassic Park first, because of course that will be the moneymaker, as what they're thinking
Yeah.
at least.
Yeah.
He said that he said by choosing a creature-driven thriller, he wanted to try to make a good sequel to Jaws on land. That's how he kind of looked at it. And he also
Okay.
kind of, and like you said, he cited like Godzilla and like King Kong and stuff like that as inspirations as well. And then he said during production, Spielberg described Godzilla as the most masterful of all the dinosaur movies because it made him and viewers believe it was really happening, which is what he ends up doing with this movie on his own. So, which is amazing to kind of, for him to, like, he had that moment with the film with like Godzilla, and he's now doing that himself in
Yes.
1992 when they
Cool,
were
cool
filming the
to hear
movie.
that those. Yeah, cool to hear that those were his inspirations. Because like now hearing, I'd never heard him say that he was inspired by those movies, but you can totally see the imprint of those movies in Jurassic Park. So like that's very fascinating. I'm not surprised to hear it, but interesting, no doubt.
Yeah. So also, Michael Crichton, he did sell the rights for $1.5 million, but he was also paid a further $500,000 to adapt his own novel, and he had finished it by the time Spielberg was doing Hook. And then they had people come in and do rewrites. David Koepp was a co-writer of Death Becomes Her. He came in and did a rewrite, and pretty much most of what we see on the screen is from him. There is, like I said earlier, I think Michael Crichton, there's a little bit of stuff that's still character-wise a little bit that's there, but it
Okay.
was a major rewrite a little bit. But I think from what I heard, Michael Crichton is fine with how it turned out on the screen, because he thinks from a
Okay.
movie
That's good.
standpoint, he thinks that the story that they were telling, and because they have to cut certain things work better in book form than they do on in a movie.
Yes.
So he actually wasn't too perplexed by any of the changes and all that. So
I
that's good.
don't imagine, considering like the success and popularity of that movie and being credited as the screenwriter for it, like I hard to imagine being upset about how it all turned out, even if it's very different from the book. But that actually makes me, I didn't realize how different from the book it was. I knew that there was, discrepancies, and I didn't realize that he also wrote the screenplay. I assume this is like a straight up like something he bought the rights for and then adapted himself. But knowing that, I
No.
would love to check out the book sometime, because the movie
Um,
is like A+, but the book I think would be a really good read
so
too.
Ty messaged me because he was like, "Oh, I really want to get back on soon again." And I was like, "Oh, like, do any of the
Yep.
anniversary episodes like interest you?" And he's like, "Oh, Jurassic Park sounds cool." So I was like, "Oh, we're recording that tonight," and he couldn't do it, but apparently he's a big fan of the books. So like
Oh, okay.
he knows that book and the Lost World. He has read both of them, and I've never actually read either one of the books, so I can't really. I only can tell you what I researched and like what was kind of changed.
Right.
I know gore being like a big
Maybe
there. I mean, I guess the gore was a big thing that was toned down in this,
that's,
which
I
makes
think, one thing that Tim Burton would have done a really good job with.
well,
He's
yeah.
not afraid, especially in his 90s and 80s. He was not afraid to show the gore. So I think that would have been cool.
Oh
But
yeah, he would have been all about it, especially after like he did Batman Returns in '92. We already knew he was doing weird mainstream stuff, so like yeah, he would have totally
yeah.
he totally would have done it. All right, let's talk some of our characters and kind of get your thoughts on what you think of some of these guys. Sam Neill, of course, plays Dr. Alan Grant. Laura Dern plays Dr. Ellie Sattler. Jeff Goldblum, the man. Dr. Ian Malcolm.
Yes.
Richard Attenborough plays Dr. John Hammond. Then we have the kids. I didn't name them earlier, but Joseph Mazzello plays Tim Murphy, and Ariana Richards plays Lex Murphy. You even got Samuel L. Jackson as Ray Arnold for good measure, and Wayne Knight.
Yes.
You know what? When I was watching it today, in movies like this was made. You guys can kind of see it in some movies now. I think Jurassic World did a decent job of like, okay, I like Chris Pratt and I like Bryce Dallas Howard, so I think they did a good job of like,
Yep.
yeah, we know we care about the dino stuff more, but I want to be able to care about like the living human breathing people that are in this movie too, which is, you know,
Yes.
we've run into that problem with some of the recent like Godzilla MonsterVerse movies where it's like, oh wait, do we really care about the humans in this, or do I really care about
Right.
like the other stuff?
Finding that balance makes or breaks your monster movie. 100% it does.
So I think this movie does a really good job of finding that balance. I think you learn
100% agreed.
enough about all of them to really care about their, and it's not like their arcs are like incredibly like, you know, like overblown or like hard to come by,
No.
but like they're still, like, you know, like get that Dr. Alan Grant is, you know, they bring up the whole thing about him and kids. You can tell like he's a begrudging about children, and
Yes.
he doesn't really want, especially when the grandkids do show up, he's like not too thrilled about that. But that's good, of course.
The scene where he's trying to like get out of like Tim's way, he's like asking Tim, he's like, "What vehicle do you plan on going in?" He's trying to avoid these questions. He goes, "Whatever one you're going in." Like that cracks me up. Like I love, and for that reason alone, like how he ends up having to like basically like protect the kids throughout the movie after everything goes to hell.
Yeah,
I'd say like Sam Neill's character's arc is like my favorite because that I think they do a great job at introducing this like quirky little trait of his character. How he's not too big on kids. They should have great groundwork in some conversations that he has with Laura Dern earlier in the movie to kind of insinuate he's not huge on kids, and then to be thrust into the situation where he is now their caregiver and develops this bond with them, I think is just like awesome writing. It just does everything. It hits those beats, it makes you care for them. The kids, interesting enough, reminded me just watching today, they have a very same path as a child performance that I find in the Babadook, where I first half of this movie, I cannot fucking stand this kid as a character. The actor does a great job. Then by the time, you know, the movie flips, the second half comes around, you're rooting for him and you're like enjoying the performance a little bit more. The kids in this movie, in Jurassic Park, I feel have a similar trajectory for me, where like I find them just annoying in the beginning, and then after they're thrust together after the T-Rex attack and they're kind of learning about the dinosaurs and Alan Grant's showing them the ropes, a lot more, and then they kind of have to do some fending off for themselves and thinking for themselves. They grow on you, so it's interesting. I kind of love and hate them at the same time. But I'm in the
same boat. The same boat.
You know what I'm saying?
They start off pretty like annoyingly precocious,
unbearable,
and, like, unbearable. Yes. And I love the T-Rex scene, right? But there's just so many things, like, you know, of course she turns the light on, and I know she, like her brother's telling you like turn the light off, and she doesn't turn the light off, and of course, you know, Dr. Alan Grant and the other car is like turn the light off, and like the kids know enough, I think, where they, you know, her brother's like turn it off, like because he can, you know, see that or whatever, like like just turn it off, but I do think they do really good, especially the latter half of the movie, like. Ariana Richards, who plays Lex, has some like really good, solid facial expressions. Like where the scene where she's like she's about to eat the Jello, and she sees like the Velociraptor like walking like behind her,
the shadow,
like the shadow. Like her face is like priceless in that scene, and it's so.
And he's looking at her like, "What's going on? What are you doing?" And she doesn't even have to say anything. You're like, "Oh shit."
Yeah, exactly. My problem with the kid stuff, I mean. Maybe I'm just being begrudging myself. Children wouldn't survive anything like this. Everything that they get through in this movie is like pure luck, like pure, especially during the Velociraptor attack. There is no real. I mean, there is some smart things that they do in that to kind of distract 100%. Them and all that, but a lot of that stuff is like accident slip on the ice, all that stuff, like, oh god, like that kind of thing. Like there's a lot of stuff that happens in that scene that's like, okay. I mean,
I
the poor
100% agree with you. Yeah, there's enough, I think, in that scene in the kitchen because it's great. Like that, I'd say that that is one of the scenes that most emulates like a horror movie. It's like one of the more tense scenes in the movie where like they're navigating through the kitchen and the raptors get to the door. But there's this awesome scene, and actually it threw me for a loop. I've seen this movie probably 5, 6 times, but I forgot this part when. Remember when Lex is hiding in like the dumbwaiter or like the little
oh yeah. And it's like
cabinet,
trying to close
and
it.
then yes, and then you
Yeah.
see the raptor sees her and is running at her, and you think she can't get the door down, she's toast, and then it runs into the wall, and you realize it was only her reflection
Actually, yeah.
that he the raptor was seeing. I was like, oh shit, I forgot, and I thought that
It's
was
such a
a
good
good enough.
misdirection.
Like she's not overpowering in it. Yeah,
Yeah.
misdirection is exactly what's happening. It's like the raptor just fell for its own trick, but. You're right. There's a scene where they lock the freezer door and like there's a wrap on the other side, and it's like really this thing would blow through this door with little Tim holding it, but somehow he's able to fend it off and close the door. So yeah, there's a little bit of that.
Little Tim outruns it on a lip. And
Yeah, yeah, on a limb.
and we're told early in the movie that the raptor is just as fast as like a cheetah. And I'm like, okay.
Yeah, that's right.
All right,
That's
right.
kind of disappointing.
I don't want to see the kids die. I mean, guys, anyone listening to this, I don't want to see them.
Hey, I say, there's two of them. That's perfect chance that you only need one to get out of there.
You would see one get eaten by a velociraptor.
I think it would add to the realism because you're totally right. There's no way they'd survive this. But again, this is a movie dealing with resurrected dinosaurs, so you got to suspend your belief. But
yeah,
I'd be okay with it. Maybe I wonder how Michael Crichton's novel goes with the kids.
Yeah, that was. I mean,
not popular. It's not in vogue to kill kids on the screen.
Yeah, and I will say though, as a kid, the stuff with the kids is pretty exciting stuff because you kind of feel like you're them. So when you're watching it when you're young, as a younger viewer watching it, I never found them annoying. It's when I got older and the beginning parts of the movie, it's like, oh, these kids are kind of annoying in the beginning. But they 100%. Do, but they much
like Alan Grant.
Yeah, much like they grow on Dr. Alan Grant. They grow on the audience too, I think. So
throughout the movie, 100%.
And I also like the relationship, or maybe the lack of defining the relationship between Ellie and Dr. Alan Grant, where it's not like full blown, like, is this a romance? Like, what is it? It's just like, it's never really like stated too much, or like,
and I think the movie is very much better off for that.
Yeah, I think there's just stuff in their scenes together where you can tell like, oh, there's history or something, or like, but like, it doesn't really. I'm glad that they don't really go into it where it's like there's this like kind of romantic connection between them. Like it's whatever it is, it's unspoken, and the movie doesn't need it. But I do love their chemistry together, though. Like even because it's not like forced at all. Like they.
No, it feels very believable between.
Oh yeah, really good. They're really good together. Yeah. So I agree with you though. I like that they didn't really like kind of, because in a movie like this they could have easily made that romantic pairing like.
I'm kind of surprised that they didn't. Like it's honestly, I think, a symptom of like any 90s movie. Like there's this forced kind of lame sexual aspect of it or romantic aspect of it. And I'm just very grateful that this movie doesn't force that on any of us. I just think like the foundation of their relationship, they just, they're honestly like kind of like work husband and wife, and they have this respect for each other in the work that they do, that I feel like it doesn't really go beyond that. Because you get that scene where I'm pretty sure Jeff Goldblum kind of like insinuates that he's going to hit on her, and he does hit on Ellie throughout the movie.
Yeah. Especially
he straight up like asks Alan if he's like, oh, is there something there? Are you guys blah blah blah? And Alan doesn't really answer. He doesn't step up and say yes, like know your role. And I think that's just perfectly ambiguous enough.
Yeah, I wanted to point, since we're talking about their characters, when Jurassic World Dominion came out, Laura Dern did an interview with the Sunday Times, and it was picked up by Variety, and they actually talked about the 20-year age gap between her and Sam Neill during the making of the movie. And
what?
So Laura Dern was 23 years old when filming started, and then he was of course 43 during the shoot. But they said that neither actor was too concerned with their age gap of their characters or their whatever romance was in the movie. And she said, I am 20 years older. Oh yeah, he says, I'm 20 years older than Laura, Neil said, which at the time was a completely appropriate age difference for a leading man and lady. The age gap being inappropriate never occurred to me until I opened a magazine and there was an article called Old Geezers and Gals, people like Harrison Ford and Sean Connery acting with much younger people. And there I was on that list, talk about acting with Laura Dern in Jurassic Park. I thought, come on, it can't be true. Then Laura Dern said, well, it felt completely appropriate to fall in love with Sam Neill. And it was only now when we returned in a moment of cultural awareness about the patriarchy that I was like, wow, we're not the same age. But she said there was less focus on it when they were making the movie back then. Which I guess, I mean, it's not something that really, I remember when I read this when Jurassic World Dominion came out, I was like, first of all, I didn't know she was 23 when she made the movie. That was
I'm still reeling from that right now. It's really weird to think about.
But you really don't get the vibe he's significantly older than her, or there's some kind of like huge age gap between them.
No, not at all. This is the first I've ever heard. Like, I never honestly really found myself wondering what the gap. I think Laura Dern has this like maturity about like her appearance where she doesn't look old by any means, but like I would have probably put her in her like early 30s when this movie was being made. I still shocked that she was 23 when filming started. That is crazy. And Sam Neill, I mean, I think he's aged wonderfully. He's a very so he was 43. I think he looks very young and fit and healthy during that. Like I went right over my head. That's really crazy.
Yeah, and Laura Dern said she was less focused on her age and more focused on ensuring her character pushed forward female representation on the big screen. And she compared Ellie, put in that same category as Sigourney Weaver's Ripley from Alien, as movie character.
That came to mind.
Yeah, as movie characters that changed Hollywood's view on female action heroes. And she said it's really moving. A lot of women in tech and science point to a similarity between Ellie's heroism and women in their field, and that's nice to hear. So I think she represents that too in the movie. Her character is really strong. I think it's interesting. Like they're fleshed out just enough where you just don't really need to go too far into like their backstories. But
great.
And I think that's more of a testament of more. I mean, it's there in the writing, but I think it's more the actors what they're putting forth and kind of bringing those characters to life a bit, and maybe adding a little bit of nuance that's not on the page. I think that kind of helps with a lot of those characters. In the case of Jeff Goldblum's character, I just love Jeff Goldblum. So
he's such a treat in this movie.
I'm just happy he's there. I don't have any complaints. Sorry, I think he's perfectly. I think he's the voice of the audience because he's so many times where he's like, "What are you guys doing?" Like when they're going through the whole spiel about how there's only female dinosaurs in Jurassic Park, and he was like, "Well, how do you know?" For sure. And of course he has that famous line that they make fun of on Family Guy and a few other stuff where he's just like, life finds a way. So like
such a great movie line. So iconic.
But yeah, he really is the voice of the audience. Even in a simple scene as when they're being chased by the T-Rex and he's in the back of the car, he's just like, must go faster.
Like put it in the fifth.
Like it's interesting because I don't think his character, I guess his only purpose is to be that voice of the audience, and that's great, but like other than that, he doesn't really bring as much as like Sam Neill or Laura Dern's characters do to the table, but he's still, I think, an important part of the movie because I think you do need naysayer, and he's the first one to be naysayer in the group.
Yes, that's really why he's brought on board in the first. I honestly kind of wonder why John Hammond even wants someone who's not going to agree with the ethics of his park in the first place. I love the dynamic that he brings and the philosophy behind what they're doing on the park. That's my favorite aspect of the movie, I would say, is that scene actually where he says life finds a way. Like that whole conversation at the table and the philosophy and the morals and ethics behind it is, I think, like one of the stronger parts of that story to me. And I feel like that must be a big part of Crichton's novel, if I would guess.
Yeah. And I think the thing that continues to stand out while I was watching it today, because yes, things go awry because of what Dennis does and certainly doesn't help. But like, I love that the main kind of theme in the movie is dinosaurs are extinct for a reason. Like,
yes.
So like trying to like play God and bring them back in an environment that they didn't grow up in, an environment that they're not familiar with. That's the real danger. And I love that is like in the DNA of the movie. So yeah, we can blame Dennis, of course. Yeah, that's horrible. And what he does, it sets off a chain reaction of really awful events. But the whole conceit behind even coming up with a concept like a park like Jurassic Park is the dangerous thing. And I think that is what the movie does in a really good way. It points to that really, not like, it's not heavy handed, but it's enough where you're like, yeah, that's the real issue here rather than like the human error. The real error is like you're bringing a species into the world that it is not familiar with, it does not understand, and you're assuming based on what you've researched, it should not be there to begin with. So you're assuming based on what you researched from the past that you're going to be able to have them in this contained control environment and be completely a-okay, and not the case.
To add to that, I think like just something that might be a little bit been overlooked is add like to you said the human error sets off this chain of events for everything that happens in this short time frame because the movie takes place only over the span of a couple of days, and this is all kicked off by Ned or what is that Dennis? Sorry,
Dennis, yeah,
Dennis, yeah, stealing the information and causing this security malfunction and whatnot. But as we see later, the because of them filling in the gene sequence with the amphibian DNA, that these dinosaurs do end up being able to breed themselves. So that insinuates, regardless, even if Dennis hadn't have done anything, this was going to spiral out of control regardless, because they are able to reproduce unbeknownst to the park creators. And sure enough, that would have led to a whole bunch of other problems with more dinosaurs than they realized they had on their hands. And who knows where that would have gone down a long enough time frame. But just harkens back to Malcolm's concerns over the what they're doing on the park and how they're playing God and standing on the shoulders of other people's work and just kind of experimenting and not taking the time to consider. I love this line of his. He goes, "Your scientists were too busy deciding, trying to figure out if they could, that they didn't stop to think whether or not they should." And I think that's like one of the best lines delivered in that movie. And I just love that no matter what would have happened, take Dennis out of the equation, this still would have eventually
would have
went awry.
Gone awry. Yeah, I want to ask you. I mean, this might be hard to answer since you've seen this movie and like what goes wrong in this movie. But in real life, if you could go to something like a Jurassic Park, would you go? Would you feel safe going to something like that?
My God, yes, I would go. I would so go. I know it's easy to say, to sit there and be like, yes, no, like, and to think now, having seen the movie and try and, pretend that that's all these horrible things. And there's a million things that could go wrong or something like this. But I feel like something of this magnitude would be simply too much, even for the most optimistic person to really turn their nose up to and not experience. I mean, no doubt something like this would be ridiculously expensive and probably only for the elite. But if I could have my ticket to go, I'm sure I'd be probably frightened, but I would look at it as like a zoo on steroids. I find zoos, amoral, and like I have issues with there's good sides and bad sides of zoos, but I'm fascinated. It's a chance that you don't really get to see, these wild animals. And I think like dinosaurs will be like that to the biggest extreme possible. So I can't pretend and think that I would not take the opportunity to go visit something like Jurassic Park if it were real. So, and I'm just trying to, be very self-aware. I think I would, be giddy to go see a T-Rex. I would go for the, it's like a line in Jurassic World where they say, I can't remember which character says it, but it's like, they're not, people go for it for the attraction, for the blood and the guts, and the bigger the teeth, the better. And I very much feel like that would apply to me as well.
That'd be you, for sure.
Big, scary real life monsters. It'd be too hard to pass out.
You're like, I
want to see you. Is that something that?
No, you're like, I want to see the goat.
100% I do. Yeah, in closest possible circumstance. But it'd be because of that I would be, deserve to be eaten for doing something so stupid. It is what it is. I am who I am. But what about you?
I feel like I'd be all right visiting like the Triceratops cage and the Brachiosaurus sanctuary, all the plant eaters. I can't see how you could have any attraction with velociraptors that would be safe.
No, that's a great point. Who thought of that? I don't know, but not a great idea.
I love that even in the movie, when they first go to like the velociraptors, like where they have them stored, and he's just going about how smart are they? What can they, talking about how like the fence is electrocuted, and like they was like, oh well, it learned after one try to basically try another spot. Like so, at one part, so they're smart. Of course, we learned that throughout the movie. When they're like, oh, how many are there? And they're like, well, there's 3, but one's contained. And they're sure, like, unless it, figures out how to open doors. And of course, that next scene is just that really good shot of like the slow door handle opening, which is great. But yeah, I don't know how you could have that be safe. I don't know how it would feel about the T-Rex.
That's what I'm saying. Like, let alone the Velociraptors. How about the T-Rex? How are you going to keep something of that size contained? I was going to ask you what do you think the most formidable foe, at least in the first movie, is? Like, are you like, what is the last dinosaur you'd want to encounter out there in the wild?
Maybe the Velociraptor. Because one, it's smart.
Interesting.
It's intelligent.
He's smart as hell. And there's multiple of them.
I mean, with the T-Rex, you could be still, and it's like, where'd you go? So it's just like,
Yeah,
yeah.
true.
The Velociraptor, it's smart. It has speed, so I couldn't outrun it.
Nope.
I I
Probably
think
couldn't
it would
outrun a
be.
T-Rex either. If you get a small enough crevice, maybe, but
That's true. So yeah, my friend actually, I have a friend that doesn't love the scene where it's chasing the Jeep, as it was like it could have caught the Jeep, and they're like, and they don't give a real reason as to why the T-Rex stops chasing them. It just kind of does. It's just like he was always
doesn't
like,
want to
"Oh, I'm
work
tired.
for its meal that bad.
I'm tired. I'm tired. I don't know." Uh, but yeah, I had a buddy that was like, "I don't get that. It would have totally like caught up to the Jeep." But I was like, "Well, I mean, I think that sequence probably. And I feel like something that would just add it to be like, yeah, we need more dinosaur action. Like, let's just throw this in there, and we gotta go get Jeff Goldblum because he got knocked out earlier in the movie."
True. It is a short sequence. The chase isn't that long. I think it's like because you get pretty much nonstop dinosaur muckage after that
Once
first
the
initial
T-Rex,
T-Rex
yeah, attack,
scene.
yeah,
And then it comes back a few minutes later to chase him out in the Jeep. And I think that scene is like very appropriate in length. It's not another big drawn out T-Rex scene because you
yeah,
just had a really big one. I thought it was very appropriate, but I'd be interested to know, maximum speed of a 1993 Jeep Wrangler and
right.
max top speed of a T-Rex. Because
T-Rex.
I believe that I believe that the car could outrun it. Like I never really thought that was inaccurate, but then again, I don't know the first thing about a T-Rex and how fast it can run. But
Yeah.
for me, it's I wouldn't want to be out there anywhere near the T-Rex. That thing frightens me a lot more than the Velociraptor. At least it'd be not that I want to be in the room with either one of them, but I don't know, there's something about the size of it that I find just innately frightening and just
The
its roar
size,
is
the
so
roar,
amazing.
yeah.
It's just enough to literally paralyze you. It's so scary. Yeah.
That first scene with the attack on the, it's so well done. Like we talked about like the effects of it, but it's a really well executed scene of like escalating tension too.
I
Cause
would say it's damn near
and
textbook perfect in how you
and
should create a scene.
And honestly, you know what? Children in peril is going to make you feel something, even if you think they're kind of annoying. So there's that added
Yeah,
aspect of it. So you have the
that's
kids who
right.
are definitely, they're not completely self sufficient. They're not like the adults. So it's like, oh, they're in a really scary, impossible situation. They're in this other Jeep, not too far off from where the kids are, but like a good enough distance where it's like, can't just, are we going to run out and go help them and get them?
Can't
And
really do anything to help them, no,
yeah, and I mean,
until they can.
I love that the one guy like gets out the car and runs and hides in the bathroom. And this is like first example of her first example of her being really great, where she just goes, "He left us, he left us," and like she's just so like
Mhm.
dumbfounded by it. And it's just the slow, like the whole like looking into the car, like before he even attacks them. There's like a lot of just walking around and like what's he gonna do. Then, dude, when he crashes through the top of the
Oh
car,
man.
and it's that scene is just so well done, and that is a good example because that's an animatronic for sure because it's touching them on the
Yep.
like glass and all
Yep.
that, and that is just so freaking well done, and it's frightening too. Like to imagine being like if that was real to like be in that situation. That's when I might agree with you that maybe encountering the T-Rex would be pretty fucking scary
That's what I'm saying.
in a moment like that because you have the size, you have the roar where it's trying to. There's a lot going on in that moment.
Yeah.
What
Can't
terrifying.
imagine that those children actors are acting at all when that animatronic dinosaur is like coming through that screen at them and it's right
Yeah,
in front of them. Oh my god, it would be so easy
Joseph,
to just scream your head off.
Joseph Mazzello said that when it comes down on it the second time, the plexiglass broke and it wasn't supposed to.
Oh,
So like, but
okay. Not surprised.
so everything that was kind of going on where it's like, oh, that wasn't supposed to happen, but their reactions are very real. Or like they
Right.
were. I mean, these are young kids, even though it's a movie. They were
Oh,
kind of
they
still
got the
terrified.
imagination. Yeah,
Yeah, right,
100%.
right.
One
And
of my
that scene
favorite
is
scenes, I
so
think,
well,
in movie
so
history.
yeah, it's so well done. And I do love that what they do to distract the T-Rex. And then after through all
With
that
the
too,
flares.
and then when he like he slowly like knocks the car over. There's like it's a series of unfortunate events that goes on through that entire scene where it's like, all right, well, he got through that. And then of course the car like falls over the thing too, and then they get stuck in the tree. There's like a whole bunch of stuff that just whatever can go wrong
On
will
that
go wrong.
note, the stunt work in that scene is crazy. When Sam Neill and the actress that plays Lex are on that rope on
Oh
the
yeah.
cliff or whatever, like and they're dodging the it's like
Like the
that
grip.
stunt work is
Yeah, it's so
crazy.
good.
Yeah, and then the whole thing in this right after that, you go to the car's stuck in the tree and he's trying to get Tim out, and then they get to race down the tree trunk before the car smushes them, and then it falls on them, kind of like Charlie Chaplin,
Yeah.
kind of style.
And it's
Like
very
it's
like
just stunt,
slow. It's very
stunt
like,
actors. Yeah, yep.
and then he's just like, we're back in the car again.
The car.
He's like, well,
Yeah,
at least
it's
we're
a,
out of the tree. Yeah.
that's right.
I
But they
love,
finally get a moment to breathe.
those two moments, like, so the moment where they're climbing the rope and she's holding onto him like so tight that he's like, you're choking me. Like, that's a moment of levity that works where it doesn't feel like forced, because that feels like what he would say in that moment.
I
And
can't
then
believe
that
he
little,
gets the words out because she's literally both arms right around his neck.
yeah. And
Yeah.
like, and I actually liked the little bit of levity when he says what he says when they fall down the tree and or they're back in the car. When he's like a
Yeah.
little, it works though. It didn't feel forced. So like those little moments of levity actually worked for me in the movie, where it's just like, oh, here we go, trying to be funny. No, I actually, I
There's
feel like a
really
child.
no
I
forced
feel like a
humor. I think
child
it
might do
works.
that. A child might do that in that situation.
I think
You know,
so.
especially a child with a grandfather that would do something like this. Like I feel like they're a very special set of grandchildren, considering who
No
the
kidding.
grandfather is. Yeah, I
Absolutely.
agree. I do agree. That's the stunt work in that scene is incredible. Just really well done and well handled. And
Yeah, there's another pretty big stunt that I did have written down to mention is later on when they are running through the facility, like kind of outrunning the raptors, and they go through the air vent, and then they come on to they're coming down these like scaffolding. I don't know what you'd even call those things. These little like suspended platforms, and they're jumping, and they're forced to jump onto like the pinned up skeleton of the T-Rex.
Oh yeah.
And then I think that the raptor comes through and like dishevels it, and then you have all your four of your main cast members are all on their own swinging suspended
That's what
section of dinosaur fossil.
Yeah.
And I'm like, that stunt is super impressive. Then they all get to scurry down, and they're suspended like many feet up in the air while getting like jumped at and attacked by raptors. Like it's just a lot going on in that scene, and like the stunt work looks immaculate, like very, very hard.
Yeah.
Steve really put the actors and crew through the ringer with this one.
I think so too, and I think why we talked about how the kids were annoying in the beginning and they get better towards the midsection and ending of the movie. Steven Spielberg is really good at working with kids, and he's done it a lot.
Oh, absolutely, one of the best.
You can tell that, like, because he still, I think, has a childlike way about him and the way he approaches filmmaking and stuff. So I think it's easy for him to communicate with them, and I think that's why he is able to pull a lot of good stuff out of kids. And probably, of course, they're not doing like all the major stunt work. They still had stunt people too, but like they were still,
no doubt.
He still put them in let them do things that they could do. They probably felt very safe working with him. And then on top of like the veterans too in the movie, like they probably felt really, I imagine that Steven Spielberg has a very controlled kind of set where he know what's going on. It's not chaotic. And
right.
I mean, of course, all filmmaking is not a well-oiled machine, but I feel like something that he would make is close to it as far as getting stuff done.
Yes. Especially he was making movies for 22 years at this time that this had come out. So he was very much a vet while making this movie. So I'm not surprised. I'm sure this went off without a hitch, but you don't ever hear about anything major happening behind the scenes on Spielberg movies.
Never.
Knock on wood. It's quite impressive with his career.
You know what moment made me jump today? And I've seen the movie so many times. It's like when they're crawling. I don't know if they're up in the vent or wherever they're crawling, but then the raptor like pops up and like I forgot that happened, and I legit jumped when I was like sitting in my bed, and I was like, dude, that would like, I mean, again, this is why the velociraptors scare me, because they're just, the T-Rex is big and there's a roar, but they're just fucking wild and like.
And they come from nowhere.
Out of nowhere.
Yeah, and they can get to you anywhere. And then so then right after that scene, another great stunt. She falls out of the vent and is hanging on by a thread.
Yeah.
And they hoist her up, just get her leg in
one bite snips at her,
jumps up. Oh, that's a heart-pounding scene too.
Yep. And then, I mean, you know what? Steven Spielberg doesn't want to kill children, but he's okay with like electrocuting one on the fence. Which is
for a minute there you think maybe Tim got it.
I'm just like, dude, let go. He's like trying to like, you're like, hey, just drop yourself down, I'll catch you, and he's just trying to like do it all meticulously, like,
he's like hell, I'm gonna jump, he says. I get it though, being no
like,
doubt
this guy's got you through a T-Rex attack, he got you through the tree thing, come on, just trust him, just let go.
I think he's earned his way there.
And I love and then his hair the rest of the movie is just like because of shock. And I think that's around the time you really start to care about the two. You're like, oh, I don't want anything to happen to the kid, even though I mean, you would be okay with like one of them ending up a Velociraptor meal.
That's
just
not
for
how I wanted
just,
to go though. I'd want him to be, dinosaurs got to eat too, okay? But that's not how I want. I'm glad Tim survived.
like just because of realism, I need one of the kids to get eaten by a dinosaur.
Here's my thought, because I don't want to sound like a depraved motherfucker here. Like I happy the kids survive, but I'm thinking like I think that scene where Lex turns on the light and gets the T-Rex back over to them when it's clearly leaving. I'm like, if she gets napped up during that scene, I'm okay with that. Like that would have been the time to have it done. But they get out of that scene. I think that's fine. But if it's gonna happen, that's where it should happen. But maybe in another life.
You know what other one is low key kind of scary? Is it the Dilophosaurus? The one that has like the little things and it spits.
Yes, the one that takes out Dennis. You're right. I forgot all about that.
I remember that scene in the theater because it seemed so innocent and nice in the beginning because he's all like making funny like little noises.
It's like a dog sort of thing. Yeah, it's like playing with
him. But when you see that as a kid, when that shit first opens up and it's just like so scary, and then whenever he spits in his face.
That is a memory I have my youth having watched this movie, is being scared of that thing when it opens up. It's like big display on its face and is like shrilly shrieking at Dennis, and then it spits at his face. Yeah, that terrified me as a kid.
So
you're right. I can't believe I forgot about that thing.
On Jurassic Park the ride, which I don't think they have anymore, Universal Studios, they when you're on like the little boat, because it's a water ride, they actually have an animatronic version of that dinosaur that opens up and it just spits water in your face while you're passing by.
Oh, okay.
It's a real cool little thing, little tidbit in case anyone remembers being on that ride and going to Universal Studios, because it was a really fun ride. They had like a really cool Jurassic Park attraction, which unfortunately I think is
what a shame. I've been in Universal Studios. I don't remember anything Jurassic Park related, but that would be such an awesome attraction to have there.
Dude,
it's just surprising it's not there.
Universal had so many fun. They had that. The Back to the Future ride was so much fun too. Like you're
would be sick.
You're like seated in this car in a DeLorean, and then it's just a video screen, but you're moving around like you're going through like time and space, like you're in the car, and it feels like you're actually physically flying through the car. Cool. It was so much fun. Yeah. And then of course new movies take over and they like take place of like those rides, and unfortunately
yes, but segue. Yeah, you mentioned something that made me think about character in the new movies. Like when you mentioned it was a water ride, that just got me thinking. Like I will praise at least Jurassic World, and the next one has a sequence too. But I gotta say, I really like that they brought in the Mosasaur. I think that's one of my favorite dinosaurs in this series, and it's only featured in those ones. I think that dinosaur is probably that would freak me out the most, because it's big, massive thing that lives in the ocean. And oh man, those sequences definitely get to me, especially the opening of the second Jurassic World movie. That is, I'd say, one of my favorite sequences in the series, even though that movie's meh. That opening is awesome.
It's really good.
But yeah, no, the movie was freaky.
I feel like I'm gonna throw this poll up when we promote this episode, but I know your answer, but I'm gonna ask you.
All right.
The T-Rex attack scene or the Velociraptors chase scene? Which one's better?
Which
I guess the one that starts. I guess the one through the kitchen.
Through the kitchen?
Yeah.
Yeah, and not hard. I love that T-Rex scene. I think it's one of my favorite. I think it's like part of what makes that movie so iconic. I think you could have this movie without the raptor scene, but not without the T-Rex. As much as I think the raptors add, and they're almost kind of like the main villain after a certain point of this movie, after you get the T-Rex out of the way. But that, to me, that T-Rex scene is so iconic and so special and so impressive. It takes the cake for me. I love the raptors and everything that they do in this movie. They have a huge part to play, and everything. They look just as impressive as the T-Rex, and it's kind of impressive there's three of them. But no, T-Rex hands down. But what about yourself?
I think when I was a kid, I would have said the Velociraptor scene, because I think it stuck with me a lot when I was a kid, because I remember
the horror is more intimate. I'll give you that.
Yeah, and I remember feeling like you got through that T-Rex thing and being like, all right, well, when you're a kid, you're forgetting about all the stuff you've seen earlier in the movie. Like you kind of forget, like, oh, there's still like these other dangerous dinosaurs that are loose. So the Velociraptor scene, you're like, oh, there's more for them to go through, and it is a really impressive, solid stalk and chase sequence. Really, just
absolutely.
I mean, as a child, it's pretty scary, and I mean, it still holds up today too. I do agree with you. I think most of what the movie represents in pop culture and how people identify it, the first thing they think about is that first T-Rex attack.
Yes,
And
and that's
um,
exactly my motivation for going with
I,
that choice.
I so many images or like just different shots from that scene are used when there's any kind of montage of like classic movie scenes that gets
It's
used the most from that
I
movie.
can picture it now in, and I'm sad to even mention this, but in years to come, that Steven Spielberg's in memoriam sequence at the Oscars, when this day does come, I have a feeling that will be like the ultimate sequence of like his movie making magic will be that T-Rex roar for the first time, like starting with the water shaking in the car as it approaches. Like that scene is just hard to put into words how like it makes you feel. It's just so
Yeah,
impactful.
yeah. I will say this too, going a little bit back to the children's stuff again. I This movie does a better job of setting up certain skill sets for the kids and using them in a way that'll pay off. Like we know that like Lex is good with computers. So like
Right.
what she's able to do to like kind of fix everything in the end so
Get
they
the
can like
Yep.
get everything back up. Like, yes, I'm glad
Yep.
that they like dropped that little tidbit about her and like it's not just like, oh, she just can suddenly do this. Like
Point.
the one scene that will always forever truly bug me in the Lost World is you have Jeff Goldblum's daughter who's a gymnast. They set that up, I guess, whatever, right? Yeah, it's cool that she's a gymnast, but I don't think she could like full on get
Oh,
a
I
good
remember this
get
scene.
a get a good swing kick in on a velociraptor and like kick it out a window, or however she kicked it out like the
That's
little shack they were in.
yes.
Even
I
I
know.
just
I remember
that
exactly.
scene. So for this rewatch, I had watched Jurassic Park maybe a year and a half ago. It was just randomly on TV, and I watched
Oh, okay. Nice.
they show Jurassic Park and they show The Lost World right after. So I just watched both of them, and I still look at the screen during that entire sequence when she does that, and she's like, I know
It's
I'm
like, give
supposed
me
to
a
think.
break.
I know I'm supposed to think that's cool. Like that was a cool movie moment. Like, oh, look what she did. No,
But
I
it's
don't.
just silly. Yeah.
It's just
No,
silly.
100%.
But at least in this, like,
Purely. Yeah.
yeah, at least in this movie, it's like, oh, okay, well, yeah, they're not jamming it down your throats. Like that's something that she could logically do. Like we talked about how she's good with computers, and you know, look how
Absolutely.
she's like, I know this. Like, yeah, she does. So good for her. Like,
And even then,
yeah,
she doesn't, execute it flawlessly. She goes through a couple of hiccups before she gets to where she needs to go, find this
right,
file to bring back on like the power grid or the whatever it is that lets her lock the doors and lock the raptors out. But she doesn't just. I feel like a movie nowadays would just have her like instantly do it right away with no problem and no adversity and not even a
right,
mention of her capabilities in the first place. But there's multiple mentions of her skills and her no knowledge on the computer well before she even has to implement it, and I
yeah,
feel like that's great. And on that note, this movie is like chock full of awesome foreshadowing and just
yeah,
acknowledgement of things later to come. I feel like that first scene at the dig site in the beginning when Dr. Grant is telling that kid about how the raptors stalk and kill their prey. It's just
yeah,
awesome setup for your character down the line, and then you get to see them in action. But this is well before they appear on screen, and you already have a feeling like, holy shit, like these things are not to be messed with. And he does a
yeah.
great job at animating how they work and how
How
they
they
are to be
were.
feared,
It
and
makes that
lots
whole
of
like
good stuff for that.
it makes that whole like clever girl moment pay off. Like all that payoff for
Yeah, that's right.
how they attack their right.
It's
But
almost like, how could you not know that there's three of them and that they're gonna draw you in on the one, they're gonna be on the sides, but obviously he's not there to
you're the
hear
expert
Dr.
in
Grant.
well, that's true. But I thought
Yeah,
he was their expert though, right? Like as far as like how they work and
right.
stalk and all that. But yeah, yeah, one up him because they're
And in
like
the
I
end,
said, they're
yeah,
fucking smart.
that's
That's why
right.
I don't know about the whole like back and forth about the whole T-Rex Velociraptor thing. Intelligent creature like that would frighten me. Like, I mean, I know that, and I know it
A
gets silly
hundred percent.
in the sequels. They like they can climb, they can like talk. I mean, not talk, but they can communicate with each other by the third one.
R- Right.
um,
Mm.
whatever. But
That's
the
a
the
big
simple
thing.
the simple stuff they have them do in that first movie is smart enough for me. Where I was like,
I think that's better off. Like, they're very intelligent, but I feel like they don't really like ranch into the realm of like disbelief. I feel like
yeah,
that's I feel like one of the big mistakes, as much as it's cool to see how they use the Raptors in Jurassic World and beyond, I really feel like they would have been better off like being like a menace instead of kind of being like a tool on the human side, if you will, for the most part.
yeah,
I feel like they were better off as villains than kind of like trained dogs, like an act
right,
that
yeah,
I don't love that they use it that way, but
yeah. I mean, I guess that's the interesting thing about Jurassic World, right? And how they set up. It's an interesting way to go about it, I guess. But I really do
100%. I don't
but
hate it. I
I
like
do
it
like them
better.
more as full fledged like I like how we're calling them villains, like they have like
I
personalities and
know,
all
but
that,
that's right.
but they are like they are the secondary villains of the first one. After the T-Rexes, you
That's
don't
right.
see him for a while. I mean, of course, both of those worlds collide in the end, where it's like T-Rex inadvertently saves our main cast members.
It's weird. They kind of flip flop. Like the T Rex ends up kind of being the anti-hero and saves them inadvertently from the Raptors, who are kind of like a secondary character who kind of become the main threat in the end. But I'm really glad you brought that up because I don't think I've really noticed how bad it was until this watch because I split my watch up in two parts. I finished it today, but you do
Yeah.
not hear that T Rex enter that building at all. It just literally comes out of nowhere. It's like, where the fuck did that thing come from?
Yeah. There's been like two.
So
There's been two separate scenes where they've indicated like these whole like doom doom like it's coming,
you
right?
hear it coming from miles
And,
away. Yeah.
and that scene at all, it's just like in there. Like you're like, oh, yeah, I
It
thought about that too. I was
snatches
like,
at the raptor mid jump. It's like, where
yeah,
the fuck did this thing come from? I actually like almost laughed. I was like, I really just kind of forgot how to introduce that character this time around. I guess I needed
yeah.
to pull it out of nowhere. And it works for the scene. But if you stop for a second, it's like, how did they not notice this? I think it's
But
honestly kind of funny. I don't really mind it, but
it's what I like about that scene too. Kind of what it shows that like for the T-Rex, there's other prey more important than like what these humans are. Like, I mean, it doesn't really know what
that's
these
right.
things like like we said, it's like weird for these animals, creatures, whatever, to be in our world now because they didn't exist
Right.
really amongst a bunch of us. So
Right.
his main like prey adversary would be one of those velociraptors. So the fact that like that is more important, that attack and that kill is more important
Makes
because
complete sense.
because clearly, even though I like how we're joking about how he storms in the room, clearly he sees all those people are humans are there and they're there, and it chooses to go
Right.
after the velociraptor because that's what
I
it
think
also
it's from
knows.
the perspective, yeah, it knows it, and it's also the more satisfying snack. It's probably 3 times the size of a human. It's probably
Right.
thinking in terms of food. I'd imagine, humans probably don't do much for a
Dude,
T Rex, but
and he takes that they take like when he throws the one into like just basically into like the fossil bones of like Jesus, dude,
yeah,
like he wrecks them.
it's absolutely those.
And
They're
then,
no
and
match
then,
for T
and then
Rex.
that shot of like when dinosaurs ruled the earth, when that thing falls down and the T Rex just
That
roars. It's such a cool
is
iconic.
so epic.
It's just so funny that there's so many cool iconic shots of the T Rex. Like, it's almost like we're mentioning it as if it's an actor in the movie, but there's so many shots of that thing that like are so like what do you use to show like your favorite moment with
Right.
call him a character
It
with
does
that
such
character.
I think it really is though. It just definitely feels like one, even though it's a. I wonder if they named the big animatronic they used for the T Rex, but
Oh yeah, I
it
wanted that
definitely
too.
feels like a character. It's hard to say. It doesn't feel like it has its own personality. It is very much present. And you're right.
Yeah.
That shot of the banner coming down as it's roaring and takes out the Raptors is like just top tier film moment, especially like for
Yeah.
Steven Spielberg. Love it to death.
Love it. You know, we talked a little bit about John Williams, but his score, which I don't think was nominated for any Emmy awards.
Damn! Wow,
I think
that's tough.
I think the score for Schindler's List was, and I think he actually won. I'll look it up just in case. Yeah, the
Did he
66
score both of Spielberg's movies that year?
yeah, he did.
Oh
I
wow!
think I will.
Oh,
I'm gonna
cool.
clarify. I believe I read that earlier, but I'll pull it up just in case. But I believe he did, and yeah, he did. He did the music for Schindler's List and Jurassic Park, and I believe the music for Schindler's List got the Oscar love. But this score is so memorable and iconic. I'm surprised that and I was looking up to see maybe if it got nominated for any Oscars for the music. I was surprised that it didn't. And those main two themes for the movie are just really, really good. Like,
They stand the test of time. They're bring back so much like nostalgia just hearing that music. It's hard to imagine that they were overlooked. That's crazy to me. But on the bright side of that, though, it swept the Oscars that it was nominated for. It went 3 for 3 for effects and visual effects, which would have been an absolute crime against humanity if that.
I wonder what it was against though. Like, I'm kind of curious.
I don't
like,
think it really stood a goddamn chance. Anything else going against it. Also won best effects and sound effects editing and best sound, which I mean, yeah, I can totally see that too. But on the note of the effect, yeah, that'd be interesting to find out what it was.
I kind of figure. I want to see what it was up against. Where it was like, was there any competition like at all?
I got one more point about that. If you pull up the list of nominees, this is one other thing I wanted to shout out effects wise. I was surprised to see, not surprised, but I didn't realize. But
What was
I
that?
guess so. Only Stan Winston was the effects coordinator on this movie. I didn't realize that Phil Tippett, who we recently talked about, his movie from last year, Mad God, I'd seen and like very very much love. But this awesome to see these two great visual effects artists collaborating together. I'm sure they've worked together before. I don't know, but I didn't expect to see Phil Tippett's name in the credits. He was I think the dinosaur coordinator on this movie.
It's so funny. I have
So
a
yeah, him and
dinosaur
Stan both
coordinator.
won that Oscar. Whatever he did on that set, I don't know what the difference between him and Stan did, but they both won that Oscar for the effects, and like it's just great. Those two guys are the best to ever do it, if you ask me. It's great to see that they
Yeah.
both worked on this movie. So who
Oh,
was
let's
up?
see.
Who was up for nominations?
So, visual effects that year, 1993. Of course, the winner was Jurassic Park. The nominees were Cliffhanger, The Nightmare Before
Okay,
Chris, and The Nightmare Before Christmas. So there were only three.
uh,
But
only
yeah, yeah, it was only
okay.
three. Yeah,
They
so
must
I
have.
guess
I've
Jurassic Park. I
okay.
think they probably expanded that award in the subsequent years to include more. I mean, I don't know, but yeah, there were only three.
I've never heard of a three nominee category. They must have,
Yeah,
because since I've ever been watching them, it's always been at least five nominees in every category.
so yeah, but I
Interesting.
agree with you. It would have been a crime if it didn't win. and
Absolutely. I don't
and
think.
a young Elijah Wood presented the Oscar for that, and
Oh,
they
no
actually had
way.
like a life size T Rex come out and also come out. Well, not the life size, but
Wow.
the head
That's
come out
really cool.
during the Oscars presentation, which is kind of cool.
That is super cool.
But yeah, I love on Williams' score. I really like quiet moment at the end where that the whole T Rex thing happened with the Velociraptors. They've gotten out and they're just on the
Yep.
helicopter, and it's just really quiet. And it's just like the main theme, but played literally like soft and light
Yep.
on the piano, basically. And that's like my favorite part of the music. Just it's so good and such a good moment of like relief for them and then relief for the audience member who's like gone through this with them.
Yes.
This entire 2 hour and some change experience that they've had.
I love the note that movie ends on. It's like, hey, they get off the island and the helicopter picks them up and they're flying over the ocean. It's Grant is looking actually at birds fly over the ocean, and it's like harkening back to his theory about he thought
Yeah,
raptors or dinosaurs evolved into birds and how they're so similar. I'm like, and
yeah,
then you're right, it's that quiet score and they're flying off into the sunset. There's no big return home and everyone's swarming them with like press, like you think it would be typical of a 90s kind of action movie sort of thing.
yeah,
Anyway, glad that it just kind of ends on them getting out and then just, in that quiet moment of peace, which they haven't had since they've been on the island pretty much.
yeah.
Great movie to go out on.
It does like it's interesting too because you end on that note with like, wow, they're. I mean, those dinosaurs are still there. Like,
There, yeah.
yeah,
Where
yeah.
can we go from here?
Where
Lots
can
of
we go from
options.
here? But I guess there is no better way to end it. I mean, you got them off, and it's just and this mode of like relief that like okay we got away and I
Yeah.
love the little quiet moments of like it kind of falls back to a lot of things in the movie like he has like the two kids with him and at this point like Ellie's looking at him like all
Yes,
right they've softened you like you hope this whole thing like now his heart's grown
that's
three
right.
sizes three sizes because these children he had to protect and again a little
Right.
cool subtle moment between them that is like as characters as people who are together or whatever their relationship is like it's like a really nice moment between them too I think character wise
Absolutely.
and I'm glad too that the grandfather John Hammond he learns a lesson even though like yeah a lot of good
Hmm.
ideas on paper about how this could have worked but it's just crazy
Right.
how like I also wouldn't want to be any I mean of course any theme park amusement park whatever it is it has to be tested by people they have to go and like see if this will work I know you said
This
you
is
would
the
go to
ultimate test.
you would go to
Yes.
Jurassic Park, but I don't know if I would want
I
to be
would
a
be a
test
test
subject.
dummy on this shit.
I would not do that. I'd be like, oh, I don't want to be the one to like test this out and see if this works.
I'd
Like,
be happy to. I would be dinosaur chump, whatever.
I will say this too about Jurassic World: the idea of that being unleashed in a full on amusement park where there's so many families and it's open like that. I did like that part of the
Yes,
movie too. That it
agreed.
creates a whole
Higher
level of
body
like
count.
a higher body count, a whole level of chaos too. That like you don't just get being stuck on an island in the park. I mean like that
Yes,
I did like that change that they did for that movie. But,
I think there's a
yeah,
lot to like about Jurassic World. Honestly, I like the whole aspect of like the genetic, uh, like enhancement of the big bad. I can't remember what they call it, the big long name, but it honestly just plays on. It's kind of like a theme to compare between legacy sequel and like how it plays on the advances in technology from the earlier days, and I feel like
Yeah.
that is a metaphor for the dinosaur, the big one in Jurassic World. I think it's like a smarter movie than it gets credit for, but
I think it's interesting too
still,
because I think like both so Jurassic Park has a similar is in a situation as Jurassic World where Jurassic Park is this really iconic groundbreaking thing and then has these two follow-up movies that don't really live up to that first movie.
yeah,
And then
right,
Jurassic World of course can't be groundbreaking and iconic because it's already been done, but at least it
but
kind
it'd
of
still be good.
it did kind of get you back. All right, this is better than that third movie. It's
Yeah,
better than The Lost World. It's better paced than The Lost World. So, okay, we're starting over from scratch, and this feels like a really good new beginning. Let's see where they go with this. And then two follow-up movies that just
yeah,
didn't live up to that, to those
and I would
expectations.
argue too. They follow the exact same path in the sense that the second one is better than the third. They did get shittier among those trilogies,
Yeah,
just to
I
different
agree.
extents. But I think the Jurassic Park 3 is, I would imagine, legions above Dominion, but
Oh
from what
yeah,
has been described. But
which is crazy to think that, but it is. Almost fell asleep
that's
during
a
Jurassic World
trend.
Dominion.
Yeah. Oh man, how could that be the case?
It's
The filmmakers failed. Man.
I know it's so
Movies like
long.
dinosaurs.
I know that roars quick and like no. I mean they banked on the. I mean it made over $1 billion worldwide. I mean it still made money, but they
Jesus.
really banked on like bringing back Jeff Goldblum, Laura Dern, and Sam Neill, and I did love seeing
Yes.
them back in it. Honestly, Chris Pratt and Bryce Dallas Howard felt like afterthoughts in their own movie. They didn't really have like a lot of development in the third movie. It was kind of
Okay.
there. So it was nice seeing the people from the first film. It just didn't, like I said, you had that one really, that second movie is not great, but it ended on a note that could have been like, oh, let's see where they go with this in the third one. And
Yes, I was very excited for the third.
the fact that they not only shut it down, but shut it down like in the opening, basically, they're like, yeah, that we're not doing that. I'm like, whatever.
Yeah,
You had a really
that's a
good
shame.
idea there. Really good idea.
It's a shame how often that really happens in cinema.
Agree.
It's really, I don't know why it is that way, but oh well. Yeah,
Agree.
no, two ended on a great note, but well,
Yeah.
I'll get around to seeing it eventually. But now I kind of want to just watch Lost World.
It's so long. It's really long, and I still can't get over the
I
fucking
could,
gymnast kick for the Velociraptor.
I
And
really don't like that scene. For me, I remember like I just have a lot of love for the T Rex getting
it has a good
to
T-Rex
mainland.
sequence. Yeah, it has a good.
Yes, it does.
Oh, you like that scene? Okay. So I like the
Oh
T-Rex.
yes,
So I like the
I
T-Rex
thought that
scene.
was so
Like
cool.
I like the T-Rex scene on the island. It's pretty fun. Very reminiscent of like the one in the first movie, of, like putting them in different
Right.
situations of peril that don't even involve just a dinosaur. And I think the Velociraptor scene where they're running through like that whole like grassy area where all the tall, it's pretty tall, and like the Velociraptors are taking
Yes,
those
I
people,
forgot
like
about
just
that.
they're like snatching them down like one by one.
That's a sweet
That's
scene.
cool. But we're about to disagree real hard, real quick. I hate the T Rex on the loose in San Diego sequence in The Lost World.
Is that right?
From what I understand, I'm gonna look it up just in case. I thought they made it up for
Okay,
the
you might
movie.
have some insight.
Let me make sure just in case. I'm
How
looking it
does
up.
it get there? I don't
Explain
remember.
to me
Okay.
why you like it.
Sure. I will. Okay. So I'm a little bit removed. Like maybe my opinion will change after hearing why your critique of it. But I'm thinking at the time of the second one comes out, how can you make your sequel not just a rehash of the first one of, these people traveling to this island where we already know that dinosaur shit has gone down and killed a bunch of people. What's going to separate this movie from the first one into that cherry on top? I think the only thing, or the most pragmatic way of doing this, is do what the audience wants and give you what's going to happen if you bring one of these massive things to mainland where it can really just wreak havoc. And I think it does a great job of unleashing that thing. And like you said, I didn't realize it was San Diego, but in the public, it's the scene where it eats the dog, where it creeps through like the house, and the little girl wakes up and sees it, and the carnage of it going down the street and like all the cars swerving off the road. I'm like, that is what would happen if were to look up and see a T-Rex down your street. So it's like a little bit cheesy, but I think it just adds a lot. What's your with this movie?
Jurassic Park. This is Jurassic Park adjacent. So I was like, maybe that scene's in the book, and I found out later that it's not. So like, but you could,
Okay.
and then I could tell it feels very tacked on. It feels like almost like,
Yeah,
oh,
agreed.
like the movie should be over by now. And I think I was already just so mentally checked out by the thing. I was like, all right, this is just already too
Okay.
long. Then I just thought it was just silly. The whole thing is just silly. Like that
I
sequence
might
is
think that upon rewatch.
just roaming through the streets of San Diego. I was like, oh man, this is so bad. Like by the time we got to that, I was like, all hope for it being anywhere as good as Jurassic Park died.
Was gone.
In that sequence. I thought that in '97, and I think it now.
Okay. Yeah. See, I don't remember necessarily like how that scene relays in terms of like the length and pacing of the movie, because I just remember that sequence from the end, and like it's one of my I'd say like sequences I like the most in the sequel, but I be interested to see how that all goes upon a rewatch and seeing maybe I will be done with the movie by the time that scene comes. But I just thought it was a way to make the sequel stand apart from the first one, and I can appreciate that. And I just like I'm biased. I just like anything with a T-Rex in it. So maybe that is kind of why I really appreciate that scene. You can't give me enough T-Rex.
So in the book, they say once they arrive on the island, they stay there for the entire duration of the book. There's no San Diego sequence at all, and it says the film goes for
a studio saying, bring it to the mainland.
Would thought that would maybe he did. I don't know. I want to have more faith.
Having such a goddamn good time filming this movie. He's like, what else can we do?
But it says the film goes for a bigger King Kong inspired finale in which a T-Rex shipped over to the mainland by Ludlow, who plans to open an improved version of Jurassic Park in Southern California, wreaks havoc throughout downtown San Diego until it's lured into a trap and sedated by Malcolm and Harding. Again, 1997 review, Crichton stated that the title of his sequel was meant to serve as an homage to Sir Arthur Conan Doyle's 1912 novel The Lost World, which centers around an expedition to a remote jungle setting populated by prehistoric creatures. They kind of just threw the San Diego thing. It feels like a studio thing, like you said, but maybe
that's what I'm thinking. Maybe. Well, hearing you mention that it's so in vain of King Kong, I'm like, that is definitely what it. Maybe it was a Spielberg thing because you mentioned how that was an inspiration. And I'm thinking, how else can I pay homage to this movie that inspired me to make this one? And you're right. It's the same ending as King Kong minus the monster dying.
I agree.
But that never even crossed my mind. But that is totally what that movie's trying to do. Damn it. But
if you love that scene, I'll let you have your San Diego.
It's been a few years though. Things change. We'll see. Yeah. I like it right now.
I almost when I watched it like over a year and a half ago when it was on TV, I almost turned the channel. I was like, "No, you got through this story. You might as well just finish watching it." Even though
completionist at heart, you said.
Yeah, I watched it at that point. Or like this, I hate this scene so much. Well, whatever, it's there, and I'm like, then some people like it. So there you go.
I'm sure we can both agree though. The first one is magnificent.
Yeah. Thoughts you want to add before we throw in some fun facts about the?
The only thing I think I have written down that we didn't mention is back. We praise the animatronics and the effects of this movie through the roof as we could do. I'm sure till we drive people sick. But the other scene I think that just looked magnificent is birth of the raptors, like as they're coming through the egg. Halfway through the movie when John Hammond is there, like kind of coaxing it out of its shell, like that.
Yeah, that looks real.
It looks like you're just watching it come out of the egg. It's very, very awesome scene and just a hallmark of the great use of effects and animatronics in that movie. But something else I think we got to that I wanted to mention.
And I know we talked about how the gore was toned down, but we still get some gory. Laura Dern has to shield an arm. She falls where she.
That's right. Another scene I remember from my childhood that freaked me out.
I think we get a goat leg thrown on top of the car before we watch the T-Rex devour the goat. See a T-Rex, a guy on the toilet. We don't see what happens to it.
Right.
The Dilophosaurus takes out Dennis. It's not graphic, but Dennis dies.
Right. Still freaky.
And the Velociraptor also takes out towards the one that's hunting them. It's just like I would love to I'll read the book and see how detailed it is as far as the gore, because I imagine
I would love to read the book.
It would make sense for there to be a lot in it, because once things go awry, it wouldn't, and you have these kind of predatory animals and stuff going after folks, it wouldn't be a pleasant sight. So
no,
of course they're toning it down for a PG-13 rating so everyone can happily go see this in 1993, and the
Right.
studio can make all their money on it. But yeah, I just wanted to point that out because
Speaking of which,
there is still some unsettling like little images in it that there aren't too much, but
it's
still are like a little
especially
jarring.
right, especially for Spielberg, which I'll give him credit for. Like the movie does shy away a little bit, but not too much, and it does deliver on the gore and like horror aspect. So I will commend it for that because I don't think many of his other movies really splurge like this one does. Maybe like Jaws, but do wish if I could change anything, I would say I'd like to see. I get what it adds to the scene. Sam Jackson's character's death, I think, would have been cool to see, but I eats into that scene of Laura Dern thinking he's behind her, and then she
Fighter,
pulls his arm.
yeah,
So I'm not gonna get hung up on that, but
yeah.
anyway, there's just a lot, it would have probably been cool to see. But speaking of studio making their money, have the data in front of you. How'd this movie do?
All
Or
right,
if you want to save that for a different point, then feel free.
no.
I'm just curious.
I think that's a good kind of way to start like the fun facts about the film. Uh, I mentioned a little bit earlier, but I'll give you the hard money. So Jurassic Park became the highest grossing film released worldwide up to that time, replacing Spielberg's own E.T. the Extraterrestrial, which was released in
Wow.
1982. In 1993 money, it made $3.1 million on Thursday night preview screenings, which would have been a lot at the time in 1993. And then it opened to 50.1 million in its first weekend on 2,404 theaters, breaking the opening weekend record set by Batman Returns the year before. The film would hold that record for 2 years until 1995 when Batman Forever took it. Upon opening, it became
Hmm.
the first film to generate $50 million in a single weekend, and it grossed $100 million in a record 9 days at the time. It remained at number one at the box office for 3 straight weeks. It eventually grossed $357 million in the US and Canada, ranking second of all time at the time behind E.T. Box Office Mojo also estimates the film sold over 86.2 million tickets in the US in its initial theatrical run. And
Oh my
worldwide,
God.
that's crazy. Worldwide, at its original run, it made $914 million worldwide, becoming the highest grossing film ever at the time, surpassing E.T. This record lasted until the release of Titanic in 1997. Then, following its 20th anniversary re-release in 2013, Jurassic Park became the oldest film in history to surpass $1 billion in ticket sales and the 17th film overall to do so. And this is also shocking to me. Only cost $63 million to make. It's a $63 million budget. Uh,
What the hell?
I think we're so
Wow.
used to bloated $250 million budgets now that it's. I was really shocked when I saw that number.
It can be done. It can be done, people.
It-
I feel like, I mean, no doubt the practical effects would have been expensive, but I help but feel maybe like the reliance on CGI. Not
yeah,
to say there's not any in there, but I wonder if maybe like that's maybe where some of the budget was allotted to. But uh, that is very crazy, very effective use of the money. But I feel like a lot of that due to Spielberg being a 20-year vet at this point, probably knows how to allocate funds to his
yeah,
movie. That is very surprising to hear, though. I wonder what that would be in 2023 dollars. It'd be interesting to compare, but regardless, that is
that's
very
crazy.
impressive.
Uh,
What
it's
we see
it's
on this movie.
its marketing budget was $2 million more, $65 million marketing budget. Said Universal took
Ah,
the lengthy
60.
pre-production period, yeah, to carefully plan. Oh, that's great. Yeah, 65 million years in the making.
Yeah.
Uh,
Yeah.
Universal took the lengthy pre-production period to carefully plan the Jurassic Park marketing campaign. It cost $65 million and included deals with 100 companies to market 1,000 products. These included uh, 3 Jurassic Park video games by Sega and Ocean Software, a toy line by Kenner, distributed by Hasbro, McDonald's dino-sized meals, and a novelization for young children. The film's trailers provided only a fleeting glimpse of the dinosaurs. Attacked journalist Josh Horowitz described as that old Spielberg feeling of never revealing too much, after Spielberg and director Michael Bay did the same for their production of Transformers in 2007. The film was marketed with the tagline "An adventure 65 million years in the making." This was a joke Spielberg made on set about the genuine thousands of years old mosquito and amber used for Hammond's walking stick. Uh, there's a lot going on with the marketing this movie at the time. It was everywhere.
Tailor made for a
I just love the one.
yeah.
I love the poster. Like the poster, like that's the image of
Still so
so
iconic.
iconic. Yeah, I mean they've of course tried to create that for all the other sequels and stuff, but yeah, that first one is just,
Right.
and I believe that was like the one poster for the movie that was released.
It's
It's like
quite
a really
effective.
really really good. Yeah. as far as its reception when it came out critically, according to Rotten Tomatoes, it has a 91% on Rotten Tomatoes, very fresh, with 136 reviews on it.
I love that score for that.
Yeah, consensus reads Jurassic Park is a spectacle of special effects and lifelike animatronics, with some of Spielberg's best sequences of sustained awe and sheer terror since Jaws. Uh, then Cinema Score audiences on opening day gave it an A. Cinema Score. I was trying to see if so. I was so. I mean, there's Roger Ebert gave it 3 stars out of 4. That feels like a more of a and a half. I mean, I know it's like
Definitely, if not
yeah.
a 4, I might be biased, but I love this movie.
He's like Roger Ebert was like it's good but not great.
Where does this movie lose points, Roger? Tell us.
Oh, here it is. He said the movie delivers all too well on its promise to show us dinosaurs. We see them early and often, and they are indeed a triumph of special effects artistry. But the movie is lacking other qualities that it needs even more, such as a sense of awe and wonderment and strong human story values.
I don't know about that. Okay.
And there is a lot of awe and wonderment, by the way.
There's literally more than you can even handle, but I don't agree with really either of his critiques. Not that I think like he's wrong, but I don't feel like this movie really needs that second part that he said. I remember how you worded it, but the feeling of you say human.
He said
what he said there.
Human, most strong human story values.
Human story values. Yeah, I don't think that is like that necessary in this movie. I think the situation that our heroes are thrown into alone is enough to really get this movie off the ground and keep you in awe. But interesting.
Henry Sheehan of Sight and Sound countered that and said the complaints over Jurassic Park's lack of story and characters sound a little off point. And then he made a point to Alan Grant's character art of learning to protect Hammond's grandchildren despite his initial dislike of them. So that's like, I mean, that's still absolutely. As a character, that's character growth. If you don't really want to all of that, it was. As far as the film's legacy since its release, critics and industry professionals have often cited Jurassic Park as one of the greatest movies of the action and thriller genres. The movie is also an example of a techno thriller as well because of the use of technology to try to create or bring something back that maybe we shouldn't. American Film Institute named Jurassic Park the 35th most thrilling film of all time on June 13, 2001. 2004, Empire Magazine judged Jurassic Park with the 6th most influential film in the magazine's lifetime. They also called it the first encounter the first encounter of really solid special effects in modern cinema. In 2008, the whole of Empire readers, makers, and critics also rated it as one of the 500 greatest films of all time. 2006, IGN ranked Jurassic Park as the 19th greatest film franchise ever as a whole. And 2010 poll, the Readers of Entertainment Weekly rated Jurassic Park as the greatest summer movie of the previous 20 years when they did the poll in 2010.
Can see that.
And then they said it was also, most importantly, Jurassic Park's biggest impact on subsequent films was a result of its breakthrough use of computer-generated imagery. The film is regarded as a landmark for visual effects. Film historian Tim Schoen said of the film's innovation and influence, in its way, Jurassic Park heralded a revolution in movies as profound as the coming of sound in 1927. Many filmmakers saw Jurassic Park's effects as a realization that many of their visions, previously thought unfeasible or too expensive, were now possible. And then ILM owner George Lucas, realizing the success of creating realistic live dinosaurs by his own company, started to make the Star Wars prequels because of what they did with Jurassic Park. He was inspired to make those because of how effects had grown since he had done his original Star Wars trilogy. Stanley Kubrick decided to invest in his pet project, AI, artificial intelligence, which he later got Spielberg to direct. And Peter Jackson began to re-explore his childhood love of fantasy films, a path that led him to the Lord of the Rings and King Kong movies. Jurassic Park also inspired films and documentaries with dinosaurs, such as the American adaptation of Godzilla, Dinosaur from the Deep, Carnosaur, Dinosaur Island, Walking with Dinosaurs. A lot of people love dinosaurs. And it's just a very important film for the industry, and like that. What he said when he said that it's heralded as a revolution in movies, as profound as the coming of sound in 1927. That
is a
compliment. Yeah.
And I feel like a warranted one as well. Like it's definitely in the vein of effects where they had come from and what they did for movies after that. It very much feels like a as important as sound. Like I'm trying to think of, we're not like a renaissance, but like almost kind of like this pivotal
Yeah.
moment where we see where the industry goes from there. And yeah, I think it's awesome to hear this movie get its praises sung, because it's hard to put into words how special it is. And I feel like all those reviews do a great job of really summarizing the impact of this movie. And it's just nice that it got this reception, because it's just so worthy of it.
Yeah, it's cool to see that George Lucas, who's seeing his friend do this, is
Yeah.
like, oh, this is what he's doing with these effects for this movie, and this is what I can maybe do with Star Wars now. I mean,
Yeah.
for better or worse. I mean,
Right.
that's a whole nother show.
Another can of worms. Yeah.
That's another can of worms, but that's cool that like he was like, hey, like it was so innovative for someone like him that was like, hey, this is what we can do now with like this technology.
Right.
And I think this is one of those movies where this is not an underrated thing at all. I think it's universally known for what it did for visual effects and really
Absolutely.
groundbreaking is in cinema. And then it's just a fun little adventure movie too. On top of all that, you have really fun characters, and despite that, I could argue that's a little bit of a slow burn because nothing really happens for like the first hour. But I guess what makes that first hour work so well is that you're getting all these little like Easter eggs and tidbits about like what could go wrong.
Right.
And then when those things start going wrong, you recall that first hour where you're like, oh yeah, they kind of said this is what could happen. if
It's
I think
yeah,
it was planned. Yeah.
excellent setup and payoff. I think in this movie, it does a really good job of telling you a lot about the things you're going to see later and preparing you for what's going to happen, and then really delivering on what it had promised earlier.
Yeah, it makes me
And for
wonder
that
if
reason,
you get Jurassic Park today, like as the one movie. This is like it's coming out today, and it
yeah.
takes like an hour to get to real action. Does today movie going audience, do they watch this and go like, oh, I'm bored, or are they in for like the ride? I guess. I mean, because people's viewing habits have changed a lot, and they're less patient.
Yeah, they have. They very much are. Hard to say, hard to really predict, but I definitely feel like you need a lot of action in mainstream movies anyway. Sooner than an hour within your movies, or you're gonna hear audiences giving it a 1 star, saying it's boring. But I mean, that's just I feel for mainstream stuff. But you're definitely right about habits having changed over the years. But no, I think this movie's paced excellently.
Yeah, I think so too. And some other little interesting behind the scenes stuff. This movie and the book generated so much interest in dinosaurs that the study of paleontology has had a record increase in students since release. Also said the T-Rex occasionally malfunctioned due to rain. Producer Kathleen Kinley recalls the T-Rex went into the heebie-jeebies sometimes, scared the crap out of all of us. We'd be like eating lunch and all of a sudden a T-Rex would come alive. At first we didn't know what was happening, and then we realized it was the rain. You'd hear people just start screaming because it would just suddenly like just come alive on set. That's hilarious.
Can you imagine? That is hilarious.
That is hilarious. Let's see what else we got here. Michael Crichton intended John Hammond to be a dark Walt Disney. However, while possibly unintentional, the character is also similar to P.T. Barnum, which is kind of true too.
Yeah, true.
When Michael Crichton
100%.
was asked why the novel has Jurassic in the title and has a dinosaur from the Cretaceous period on the cover, he replied that had never occurred to him and admitted that was just the best looking design. So stop,
You know what?
stop being nitpicky.
Yeah, I don't blame him. It's funny though that it doesn't necessarily line up, but I think that's led to like some kind of like misconceptions about just the different periods and eras of dinosaurs. But whatever, I think for the best. Yeah.
Arian Richards' audition consisted of standing in front of a camera and screaming wildly. Steven Spielberg wanted to see how she could show fear. She said, I heard later on that Steven had watched A Few Girls on tape that day, and I was the only one who ended up waking up his sleeping wife off the couch, and she came running through the hallway to see if the kids were all right. That's hilarious.
Now that's a good audition.
Williams scored the movie at the end of February 1993 and recorded it a month later. He felt he needed to write pieces that would convey a sense of awe and fascination, given it dealt with the overwhelming happiness and excitement that would emerge from seeing live dinosaurs. And I think that's what that music totally does.
Absolutely. I think you hit the nail on the head.
Yeah, definitely does. Crew had to have safety meetings about the T-Rex because it weighed 12,000 pounds and was extremely powerful. They used flashing lights to announce. They used flashing lights to announce when it was about to come on to alert the crew, because if you stood next to it and the head went by at speed, it felt like a bus going by. Jesus. that's
Holy smokes, 12,000 pounds.
that's crazy.
That is a fucking prop.
James Cameron has stated that he wanted to make this movie, but the rights were bought a few hours before he could bid. Upon seeing this movie, Cameron realized that Spielberg was the better choice to direct it, as his version would have been much more violent, uh, Aliens says, which wouldn't have been fair. He said wouldn't have been fair to the children who relate to dinosaurs. But he,
Yes, but fuck, I would have loved that. Cameron would have been a good person to direct this too, if not Steven Spielberg.
I think so too. Difficult effect to pull off was the vibrating rings of water. Even Spielberg wanted the T-Rex to announce his presence, except for at the ending. I just added that in for your sake. To somehow,
that's the most difficult effect to pull off. What?
Somehow before the audience saw it and got the idea from watching the mirror in his car vibrate from the bass effects while listening to Earth, Wind, and Fire. Michael Lantieri when he tried to replicate that with water, it was harder than any of the dinosaur effects. Nobody knew how to do it, but told Spielberg they could. The night before the shoot, Lantieri put a glass of water on a guitar, and when he plucked the strings, that did it. So for the scene, they fed guitar strings under the dashboard to get the effect. A man on the floor plucked the strings to achieve the effect of the water vibrating. That's crazy.
Interesting. Now that rang a bell. I had heard about it being related to guitar strings for the. I didn't realize it was that difficult. It took them that long to figure it out. But that's hilarious. That little effect, which I mean, it's very impactful, but in the grand scheme of things, is very small. That would be the most difficult one to figure out. That is it's ironic. Well, very ironic.
After Joseph Mazzello was turned down for a role of Jack Benny in Steven Spielberg's Hook, Steven Spielberg said that I do want to work with you and I promise to put you in my next movie, and he put him in Jurassic Park.
Wow, that worked out.
That's awesome. Really,
very well for him.
That's awesome. Yeah. And there's a lot of other fun facts to read about this movie. There's a ton.
Sure, the list is endless.
But those are some interesting ones I thought would be really cool to share. And
absolutely, and I'm glad you did.
Final thoughts on the film?
Just my final
and your score too.
I just wanted, well, that's what I was going to ask. And in our fashion, I wanted to ask what you rate this movie, what how it holds up for you, and what your overall score would be in whatever way that you wish to rate it.
It's like perfect. It's like perfect to me almost. But it feels weird to give it like a 10. Like
I'm leaning, man.
But I don't have any issue. I don't have any issues that like Ebert has as far as like character development and like like all that. I mean, yeah, I'm gonna give it a 10 out of 10. I think it's, and again, like when we give our scores for these, we know there's like a different kind of litmus test on how to like rate films. But this is, I think, one of the great ones. So I mean, it is the pantheon of really great movies.
Absolutely, I don't think anyone's gonna argue with there.
IMDb score is an 8.2 out of 10. That's pretty damn good for a movie like this on IMDb.
Honestly, so I looked it up too, and I had, from the last time that I had watched it, I rated it an 8 out of 10 stars. And I don't know really what I'm thinking, because after this last watch, I'm thinking like, damn, that's a 10 out of 10 movie. Like I had nothing to take away from it. It was just hits everything right. There's so many things to love about it, and just can't sing its praises enough. 10 in my books.
Yeah, I'm cool with that. 10 in mind as well. I mean, I've said it before about Steven Spielberg. I don't, compared to most filmmakers, hard to recreate that like childlike, like, oh, this is movie making. This is what movies make you feel. And I think because Spielberg feels that himself, he so easily conveys that in everything that he does. And this is one of those really good examples of him creating something that, like, he knows that like a young kid's gonna see this and be like,
yes.
Even though
inspired.
Roger Ebert said there wasn't a lot of awe and wonderment in it, there's a ton of awe and wonderment in the movie.
I don't know what movie he was watching, honestly.
I know. I mean, sometimes I think critics be in bad moods when they go to a screening. Sometimes, like, I'd love to see them reevaluate and watch it again. I'm
sure many times they think, "What the hell was I thinking?" But
that movie captures that for me in a really big, significant way. I really love it. I
couldn't agree more.
It's a test of time. I can't believe it's 30 years old.
It's
you get one of those timeless movies that just doesn't look its age and doesn't feel its age. It feel like it came out yesterday, and that's God, to be a filmmaker, to have something that came out in 1993 that still feels ever so relevant and present and timeless.
Yep.
He has a bunch of those in his filmography, but this is one of them. So that's my thought on that. We're both 10 out of 10s on this. So yeah, I'm very happy with giving Jurassic Park a 10.
So am I. I think that's the first for us, where we
Yeah,
both
yeah,
give
yeah,
them
yeah.
10 at the same time. But if it's going to be any movie, let it be Jurassic Park, because that movie really, really lives up to all the hype and all the legacy that it has behind it. And if there is anybody in the off chance listening that has not yet seen Jurassic Park, let this be reason that you see it, because man, that movie is truly special. You've not experienced really awe-inspiring cinema, I don't think, until you've seen Steven Spielberg's Jurassic Park,
Jurassic Park.
which turns
I agree.
30 years old this month. Very,
Yeah.
very crazy thought to think about.
And Jurassic Park was a huge, big summer movie in 1993, and we are in the midst of summer movie season in 2023,
Yes.
and we have a big. Well, we seems like it's gonna be a big movie. I can't tell anymore. A big movie coming out.
It'll be big.
Yeah.
Just maybe not as big as it was led to
We
believe,
got a
but
big movie
there's
coming out.
no doubt.
Yeah, we didn't do predictions last week because we had our 100th episode. Transformers did open last week. It was right in line with tracking at $60.5 million opening weekend, kind of what I would have predicted it at as well. Open to $171 million worldwide. Of course, a huge hit in China. They love it over there. I think globally, Transformers will be okay. Basically, you'll probably see a drop because it's actually going to be competing with our boy the Flash
Right.
weekend. Actually, you know what? It was really big competition this weekend too. The second weekend of Across the Spider-Verse did really well. It dropped 54%, but it was still a $55 million weekend. It is already
I see that tomorrow.
It already outgrossed Spider-Man Into the Spider-Verse domestically and worldwide. It's made $225 million. $225 million domestically. The first one made $190.2 million domestically. This did this.
Still got a ways to go.
It still got a way to go, and it did this in 2 weeks, guys. So congratulations to the team of Across Spider-Verse, because I saw it and it's amazing. Jackson's seeing it tomorrow. It's really top notch. I'm trying to figure. I'm still trying to figure out where to rank it in the Spider-Man films, but it is really well done, and I should definitely check it out. But
very excited for that.
As far as the Flash, a lot of pre-release hype before it opened. Started at Cinema. Well, actually, you know what? It started before CinemaCon. It started with C co-head James Gunn,
right,
saying that it was one of the best comic book movies he's ever seen. And then Warner Brothers Discovery CEO also said the same thing. Then everyone made jokes about how many comic movies has he seen. And then out of CinemaCon, a lot of critics who saw it early also said one of the best comic movies ever made, certainly the best DC movie ever made. There were a couple critics that went there that were like, it's good, but not that great. Calm down, guys.
Right.
Then they were doing all these early press screenings. I didn't go to my early press screening 2 weeks ago because I found out, and they happily gave me and my brother IMAX codes to go watch it when it opens weekend. So thank you for that.
Okay.
But they weren't showing like a full version of the movie. They weren't really showing parts of the ending because they wanted to keep it secret. I didn't want to see the movie, and I didn't want to see the movie twice if I didn't have to. So
yeah, fair enough.
So again, a lot of fan screenings, press screenings, the praise on. If you go on Twitter and just hashtag the Flash, you will find so many critics who are loving it. But then the Rotten Tomatoes score came out, and after they lifted the embargo last week, as of this recording, it's a 71% fresh rating. That's not a bad score, but it's certainly not the second coming of Jesus, the way they were describing it for comic book movies.
Not in the top tier of superhero movies, even DC movies, that kind of score. And to be honest, this is more in line with what I expected from this movie, even from early. I didn't trust anything from Warner's CEO and James Gunn. I have no doubt that they are very proud and feel like it is a great movie. I have no doubt it is. But when those people who have a stake in this movie are saying it is greatest, or at least on par with the greatest superhero movie ever made, you lost me. That's just not how I really want to see the movie start. It's run. You know what I mean? I just
start hearing like this is the best comic movie since The Dark Knight. I'm like, those are big shoes. Be careful.
Yeah,
they're really big shoes.
Exactly. Rarely would something really live up to that, and I didn't really think that it was going to be this movie. But I still think 71 is a great score, and I'm honestly kind of relieved because Rotten Tomatoes, especially with superhero movies and Marvel and Disney products, in particular, they're really bad for. I don't feel they really reflect the true score of movies like this. So to see it at a 71, buy that. I can get behind that score.
And so far, the 71% is pretty good for the DC releases because some of them aren't very good.
Yeah,
This is is
right.
good for them.
Many of them.
But
That's a win.
happened when that score got dropped? The box office tracking shifted a ton. So right now, as of this recording, last week it said they were predicting a $70 million opening weekend. I looked again today; they dropped it to $68 million. I can't tell if they're lowballing it or if they really feel that. There is hype. I mean, for people that especially love Michael Keaton as Batman, there's a lot of hype for that. It's so weird. When I saw those numbers, I was like, that's so low. To put it into context, Black Adam had less hype, and that is around what it was tracking before it opened to like 68 million.
Okay. I feel like this is a low ball situation.
So yeah, I think so too. The movies, JC, he was like really thinks the Ezra Miller factor is a problem for some people. It's keeping them away. I didn't think it was going to be as big of a detriment as it be turning out to be, but I am seeing a lot of professional critics that I associate with and talk to can't feel desire to support the movie because they feel like they're supporting them, and that's fair. It's a big debate about because some of the negative reviews on Rotten Tomatoes call out the fact that they didn't really enjoy it because of watching Ezra Miller, not his performance, but Ezra Miller as a person. And I don't think I don't really think it's fair to rate a movie based on your personal disdain for someone because that's not where you're supposed to be reviewing.
No, exactly.
So we have to take that to a grain of salt too. That's where some of these negative reviews are coming from. But I guess the Ezra Miller factor is a big deal for some. It is keeping some away. I agree with you. I think being lowballed a bit.
Yeah.
68 seems low.
That does seem low.
This is a $250 million movie. It needs to do well because I think this is supposed to reset the DC universe as we know it.
Oh man, knowing that's the budget, I mean, I knew it would be high. That's the first time I really heard the figure, but that's trouble. If it doesn't even hit tracking, which I'm thinking, even if it does hit tracking, which I think is low end, it's 70.
Yeah.
Considering how much it's going to drop off.
A lot of these movies, big movies like this one, like Indiana Jones and the Dial of Destiny is tracking at $60 million. Like even Kingdom of the Crystal Skull had a much bigger opening than that. It's crazy that these big movies are tracking now, and a lot with Indiana Jones that had to do with the early reviews out of the Cannes Film Festival. That didn't help at all. This is a really good example of me I reading hype for The Flash in real time, and it felt like, all right, this feels like a 120, 130 weekend kind of movie. It felt that way.
Kind of what I expected. Yeah.
I don't feel that way anymore, but I also don't feel like it's this low.
100%. I couldn't agree with you more. I don't think it's going to be this low, but I don't think it's going to be in the 3 figures. But I have a number in my head. If you still want some time to think, unless you're thinking of what you got.
I'm going to go with 90 million opening weekend. I don't think.
Okay.
It does cross in the triple digits. I wouldn't be. Maybe there's enough goodwill there for Michael Keaton Batman fans. A lot of people are maybe looking forward to this to kind of push it over into that territory.
I think that's gonna find a lot of money for him alone.
Tracking has been off before, but you have to be way off if it is able to go 100 plus the weekend.
100%.
But yeah, I'll go with 90.
Okay, I like 90. I mean, I was initially thinking 85, and I'm gonna bump it up a little bit just because you went higher than I even thought. I like 87. I don't want to be too far behind you, but 85 was the first number to come to mind. But this movie has a much steeper climb than I thought it did. To even break even, and let alone they don't make movies with this kind of price tag to make a few $1 million. Obviously, they want this movie to be very successful. So this is very not looking great from the get-go. So
yeah,
even though the score I'm sure is no doubt reflective of the movie, but tracking and stuff, that's worrisome.
Yeah. Well, we got 90 from me and 87 from you. Ezra Miller walked the red carpet tonight. I mean, interviews of course, but walked the red carpet at the premiere. I mean, first public sighting in a long time.
This was their first public. Wow.
But yeah, a lot. And so I saw the article pop up, and I actually know I might get shit for this because there's so many people that don't feel sorry for Ezra Miller. I watched the pictures, and I'm sure this must be a very nerve-wracking experience for them too. If it really is a mental health issue, and that's what the problem is, and
I think,
let's say they got the help that they needed, and like rooting for someone to be better.
Right.
And if that's the case, then I hope that is what's going on. You know, it's weird. Like some people that are, the court of public opinion is not as forgiving, man. There's
No,
not.
it's not.
But there was part of me that was looking at those pictures, wondering like it just must be so hard for them to like at least putting yourself out there to like people are going to say something, and like there's going to be a lot of talk, and I'm sure maybe there are people shielding them from that a little bit. He's also a grown ass man too, of course, but like a little bad. And I know that Ezra Miller is not someone that elicits a lot of empathy at the moment, but
definitely not recently. No,
but I felt a little.
With you though, I'd stand by that. Like I have empathy for anybody going through really obvious mental health issues, especially ones that lead you down a path where I believe they're facing criminal charges, which are still yet to be dealt with. Being said, I mean, it's hard to find the line. Like, yes, they've the nature of everything that happened with this. So I remember some things when they were coming out in the media, but obviously, some criminality involved.
I lost track after a while.
I lost track for a while too, but it's easy to point the finger when you hear about these things. But like, mental health is its own beast, and obviously Ezra has been suffering with quite severe issues, and it's easy to point the finger and not support a person when they do these things. And I wouldn't blame people for not, but it's obviously a very complex issue, and one that I think requires a lot more help than they've probably received in the amount of time that's elapsed since these events and this premiere. So I think there's still some work to be done. Granted, I'm no expert. I don't know what they're going through, but I can't help but feel, it's nice to, have some sympathy too. I'm not alone.
Yeah.
Being said,
well, I hope we'll see how this all. Well. I hope it does well. Yeah. I mean, I wish any film to have like a disastrous result financially. I want films to do well. So we'll see. Well, you're like some movies deserve to flop, Gaius.
Yeah, definitely. Yeah, just did flop, but it's good for the industry for them to do it well. So I get your perspective, but as this time next week we will be how this movie opened, and I'm excited. There's probably some other ones we'll have to check in on and see how they're doing at the box office too. We never really chatted after the first week, Little Mermaid, and I'll want to probably come back to Transformers, but we can save that for next week because it's going to be.
We'll kind of do the fly kind of idea. We'll just kind of do like a kind of progress report so far because we're already through. We'll be through a lot of June, like May and June for some of the summer. Great idea for the summer releases. So we'll kind of see where things are standing.
See how things are doing.
Yeah, where things are standing right now. So you'll hear that on our not the next episode, because we have another anniversary episode we're recording this week that will come out before.
Next Friday's episode, probably.
Yeah. Before we cover news and box office again, we're gonna keep the anniversaries cranked out. We're getting this one first on Thursday, and the Hardly Wait 25th anniversary episode will be released on Monday because we're recording that this week. Two very different anniversaries. One very iconic Steven Spielberg movie, and one could argue one very iconic late 90s teen comedy that kind of came out during the golden age of late 90s movies. Starring a whole bunch of people that you will recognize from the late 90s. So that was going to be a fun one to revisit.
It'll be doing first time watch for me too, so I'm excited.
First time watch for Jackson. I have Mark J. Parker from the Release Date Rewind podcast on that episode as well. He's the perfect person to be on because he loves that period of movies, much like myself. It's going to be a fun little visit with the class of 1998. Maybe bust out our yearbooks and kind of see what I was doing in 1998. You weren't doing much.
I was in my mother's womb for most of the year, so that's right. But then I popped on the scene 17th of this month, actually. So I'm celebrating my 25th birthday this weekend, so I'm excited for that. I love that period of movies too. A lot of great 98 flicks. It was a great year for. I busted on the scene in a great movie or a great year theatrically.
You're a good year. That year, 1999, is like another good movie year. You were born during a good time period. Yeah, good
definitely
ones.
was.
So there'll be and I have experienced the movie before. There'll be a first time watch for you. It'll be interesting to see, like, from a 2023 lens, what you think of this 1998 teen movie comedy.
Very excited to lend that perspective on this when we talk about it.
As always, be as honest as you can be, even if it doesn't hit you the way it hits us.
I will be.
It'll still be a fun one to revisit. But we have a ton of anniversary episodes in June. We're not gonna be able to get to all of them, but we're gonna do as many of them as we can. I've even asked to be guests on some of the June ones that are listed on the calendar. So look forward to a lot of those and more industry news episodes. And we're probably going to be cranking out some other special episodes here soon because we want to make the next 100 episodes of Back to the Blockbuster as memorable as the first 100. So that's the
Absolutely. We're
idea.
not slowing down.
That's the idea here, folks. All right. So Jackson, send us on off.
Absolutely, guys. Well, thanks for joining another anniversary episode, a very special one where we celebrated Jurassic Park, turned 30 years old this year. It's been a blast talking about this movie. I just was so overwhelmed with how much I enjoyed it. I hope you guys enjoyed listening to it. And I hope listening, if you feel inspired to go watch it, you guys let us know on social media what you guys thought. Always, we've been Back to the Blockbuster. You can find us anywhere that handle on social media or wherever you guys get your podcasts. Gaius, has always been a pleasure talking movies with you, my friend. And I'll see you later this week where we discuss our next episode where we discuss Can't Hardly Wait. And this has been Back to the Blockbuster, guys. Thanks a lot for tuning in. Have a fantastic rest of your week, and we will see you next time.
Peace. Boom.